Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in here. Murder Church on a Sunday morning. We have made a full loop, a full circle back around to Phil Spector, the murder trial we are deep into, going into episode 46. Thank you for being here. Last week was extremely interesting with Dr. Vincent DiMaio, and we've got, starting out with just a couple of minutes, I think about 20 minutes outside of the presence of the jury before we get into part two of him. And yeah, maybe we'll get into some cross here and see what else we got lined up. If you're just walking in, hit that like, share this out on X, and let's rock and roll.
Let's rock.
Oh, everybody, what's up, what's up? Get in here, get in the door. I'm still trying to get things situated. I got up a little bit later than I wanted to. Good morning, Murder Church. Let me start you out with some bells. How about that? Those are working, right? Yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Welcome in here, everybody. Thank you so much. Again, we're continuing this Phil Spector murder trial that we are incredibly deep on. I was just looking through here really quick at the list. We do have from Friday night right now I'm trying to give away the new holiday tee that we got rocking and rolling right here. And I was just looking real quick to see what we got here from Friday. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're only 4 away from giving this bad boy away, the new holiday Publicly Buzzed design. Wouldn't you love to go to a holiday party and let people know exactly what you're doing? We'll see if we can do that. Thank you all again for being in here. We got the bells rocking and rolling. Last week was extremely interesting with the testimony from Dr. Vincent DiMaio. He was getting deep into the possibility and giving some pretty good testimony, in my opinion, to the possibility of Lana Clarkson killing herself. And we're going to dive back in here. And I know that the chat was wild on that last week, but I thought it was extremely interesting. And I bet this is why the jury could not make a verdict, was maybe that day of testimony. Because after that, I was like, holy shit. But we're going to keep on rolling here. We'll see what the cross has in store. But first and foremost, we have something outside the presence of the jury. Let me get that up here. But let me see who's hanging out in here real quick. First of all, who's hanging out today? Yesterday, I know I was hyping up Friday. We were going to be doing a Sarah Boone stream. Yeah, the lady that I have that I'm going to be having on, she was feeling a little bit under the weather, so we're trying to do that for next Saturday. So keep an eye on that. I'm going to be getting some plugs out, working on that. And again, we're going to be continuing down the Courtney Clinty road. So we have 3 things going on at the same time within Murder Church right now. Oasis Cat's in here. CH is in here. Pokemom's going to be coming through modding up this morning. Appreciate that. BGOG. Hell yes. Cheeny's in the house. Sheila Duffy, I just got your shirts. Should be getting those out the door to Ireland this week, which would be fucking dope. As we continue to get merch all over planet Earth. Here with Publicly Buzzed. Pammy coming through here. Morning, y'all. Won't be in long. I'm at my grand's for the next couple of days. Just wanted to say hi. Pammy, thank you so much. The lovely lady that you are. Couldn't agree more. Ronnie coming through here. What's going on? Again, I'm trying to actively wake myself up as I introduce the show. Bassett Page in the house this morning. What's up, everybody? That's what I'm talking about. Whoa, MLS coming through here. Hell yeah, we got a lawyer hanging and banging this morning. Boone, baby. That's right. Sarah Boone was my most anticipated trial to date. Out even more so than Brian Kohberger and the Idaho 4 stuff, which is approaching within, I guess, the summer of 2025 or some bullshit. But yeah, the Phil Spector trial has been incredibly tedious. It's been intriguing. It's been boring. It's been everything. It's been all of the above, quite frankly. But last week, with Dr. Vincent DiMaio coming through here and laying some groundwork for some pretty interesting testimony for the possibility to why maybe Lana Clarkson killed herself that night in the presence of Phil Spector. I don't know, man. It was making a little bit of sense. So let's see where we're starting out this morning outside the presence of the jury. Again, thanks everyone for coming through. I see Jesse Charles in here. Strychnine, Dizzy. Still got some folks flooding in this morning. That's what I like to see. Folks. If anybody missed Feral Friday, holy shit. That Australian prisoner show is crazy. Like, it is seriously maybe my new favorite show. It's amazing. Like, the ability to make fun of it while also being intrigued by it, but also being gripped by the fucking story, I'm in awe. Like the exploitation vibe of it, I'm in awe because this was on network television in Australia in 1979, and anything in America network television, you have to be in on some Feral Fridays, guys. I'm hyping this thing up. I'm going to keep hyping this thing up. You know, Feral Friday will not always be prisoner. We watch movies, listen to music, we watch TV shows, but this one is fucking wild. And again, we can only do that on kick.com/publiclybuzzed because we can get away with a little bit more over there than on the old YouTubes. All right, guys, let's jump in here. Phil Spector murder trial coming at you. Let me get my names up here. I think I still got them. Yep, boom, Dr. Vincent DeMaio. Let me get my shadows up here. Bada bing, bada boom. Let's rock. Actually, before we rock, I need to get the sound on. And now let's rock.
The jurors and the alternates have left the courtroom.
Originally,
we were going to take this afternoon to discuss some of the motions that are pending because I was going to use the time.
Oh, shit. Before we do get rocking and rolling, we are outside the presence of the jury here. Judge Diehard, my favorite judge of all time right now. BGOG is going to come through, though, and start us out this morning anyways on the wheel. Getting on the wheel that's already active. Trying to get that new Publicly Buzzed holiday tee. And that's what I'm talking about, baby. BGOG getting you on there. Thank you so much. And also, I just got all of the footage uploaded to this computer, so I'm going to start working on it probably today, quite frankly. But from the beer fest we went to 2 weeks ago, on that Saturday, I'm going to get that video rocking and rolling so you can see me and Dan hanging out in an interesting place. And after that, we went to the cigar lounge and hung out and had some drinks. It's going to be, again, only for members only. And I think I'm going to be I was thinking about this last night. I'm like, man, the Patreon folks, the members, I want to take care of these folks even more so than I already do, right? I'm always trying to think of a little bit of something extra. I'm going to design specific Buzz Nation tee only for Patreon peeps and for members. So it's just a little bit more incentive. Just a little bit more incentive to jump in there, guys. And anytime we get any new members, beers in the chat, hell yes in the chats, liquor drinks in the chat. Keep that sumbitch rolling. Thank you all so much.
Counsel met with me in chambers and indicated the only motion they were ready to proceed on was the people's motion to admit the evidence of the statements of Victor Tenazzo. There is another motion we're going to deal with because that does not need any time, and that's the renewed motion to compel the defense discovery Ray expert fees, and I'm going to deal with that as well. So, Mr. Jackson, your motions. Diane, are you okay? Let me just check. Diane, are you okay? Can you go? We're going to we'll take a 5 or 10 minute break.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, that's how you start out a day, isn't it? That's how you start out a day.
All right. Back on the record, the jurors and alternates are not
first
present.
and
All the other
foremost,
parties are. Why don't we take the
Hey, motherfucker.
discovery question first? I think that's
going to be real easy. I think they've complied. They have.
Oh.
I don't think you know this. They have since supplied to Mr. Ocampo an updated.
Last week, updated list of.
What you
the motion's granted.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, no problem.
And thank you.
Okay. The people's motion to admit the evidence of Vincent Tenazzo.
Thank you. I'll be brief because you have our moving papers, and as Mr. Rosen pointed out in his motion, it's not the first time you've heard this.
Right.
Our position is very clearly that we think the cross-examination of a number of witnesses, including Romney Davis and Kathy Sullivan, has opened the door on this by letting the jury really hear what we think.
Oh, dude, I know. 2007. And what's crazy is that feels so fucking long ago, but it's actually not. Like, it's not. That's me feeling old as hell also, like every single day of my life now, because I graduated in 2005, but yeah.
Presentation of.
But also, if you actually look at it, like the decor, the vibe of it, like it feels like it's from the late 80s, early 90s, but yeah, it's only 2007. Like,
Mr. Spector's attitudes towards women, and we think that Vince Tenazzo's testimony is a fair rebuttal to that. But really, the reason that was done on cross-examination by the defense was try to impeach, rebut, if you like, the 1101B witnesses that have come in here, and we think that Vince Tenazzo's testimony, we'd be glad to sanitize it in any way the court sees fit, is a fair rebuttal to that, because what it does, it shows exactly what the defendant's state of mind is in the situation, really a recipe of women, guns, and alcohol, and his hatred of them. And our view is it's exactly what he was thinking with respect to those 1101B witnesses when he was sticking a gun in their face, and what happened here when Lana Clarkson was murdered. That's why we think it's admissible. The court, I know, knows what your ruling was earlier. Both sides have cited it to you. We think it fits. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosen.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I think that the government is asking the court to make a Grand Canyon leap of logic here. The government is urging this court to undermine its original ruling in this case without any of the changes or the conditions that occurred based on the original ruling, along with the fact of saying because these statements were made over 10 years ago, that they embrace the class of individuals of which Ms. Clarkson is, that is, females. I think the starting point on this is really, I don't know that we even need to go further. The starting point is clear. And while the court has, in fact, read from the transcript, the daily transcript, because it's been cited in the government's original papers, it's been, in the government's renewed request, and it's been cited in our request, it seems to me that that really is the starting point in the analysis. Quoting, Your Honor, from the April 10th transcript, which has been appended as Exhibit 1 in both the opposition and in the renewed request, let's look at what the court said. And here's the court's words, this very court. Quote, again, depending, for instance, and this is a pure hypothetical situation, if the defendant were to get up or other witnesses were to testify during the defense, and again, there's no indication that any such testimony would take place, I'm giving you a hypothetical. I love women. I have always loved women. I have never said a bad thing against women. And you have this statement, then, and the court says, it might be a different story. Not that it would be, that it might be. Well, neither of those conditions precedent to allowing the invocation of a request that you basically indict your ruling that you've already given the government has occurred. A, Mr. Spector has not gotten up on this witness stand and said, I love women, I have always loved women, I have never said a bad thing against women. That remains to be seen if that will happen. Secondly, the other condition, other witnesses were to testify during the defense. Well, we've only started the defense at this point, and the only person you've heard from was this morning with Dr. DeMaio. So no other witness has gotten up in the defense and testified to those facts. That seems to me to be the starting point and the ending point of this. The suggestion to this court, once again, made by the government, that the court might want to take a look at this, entertain the idea of sanitizing it, was addressed previously by the court, wherein the court said, and again, the best thing to do is look at the court's own words, and if I can just have a moment, I have it right here, and this is on in my moving papers, my opposition, page 8, lines 14 through 15, and it's a short quote, and it's the court's quote from when we had the original argument, and it goes as follows, quote, I don't think you can sanitize this statement. It appears to be, hyphen, the offensive word appears to be the basis of the entire statement. It is repeated so many times. I think even if you sanitize it, what is being said is very clear, and what the intent is. I just, hyphen, I don't see it. So the suggestion that we can sanitize this and clean it up was already decided by the court. It was already handled by the court. The court already issued its ruling. Nothing has occurred during the cross-examination of any of the 1101Bs or Ms. Davis or Ms. Sullivan that changes that in any way. As
in the door.
a member of the bar and as one of Mr. Spector's defense attorneys, I would have been derelict in my responsibility to him not to cross in the way I did, but it didn't open the door because they aren't defense witnesses. And although the moving papers attempt to characterize them and color them as defense witnesses, they're not. We didn't call them. The government called them. We merely cross-examined them. We're not in the defense case yet. So I don't see anything that has occurred throughout the course of the government's case thus far that in any way changes, modifies, or should change or modify the court's ruling. The court was correct. It handed down the correct decision at that time, and there's been no reason that it should change its decision now.
Okay, thank you, people.
Only, Your Honor, that this is a 1220 statement, so on its face, it should come in. The reason the court is had these hearings and is going through this is through a 356 analysis, 352 analysis, and I think it's fair for us to bring this back to the court at various times during the trial, and since we're about to rest, I thought this was the appropriate time.
Okay. I've got some questions in trying to build a timeline. The statement was made on what date, allegedly?
I thought they already arrested.
Actually, there were two. There were two alleged statements made 1 year apart at Christmas time. We're either at 94 and 95 or 95 and 96. Mr. Tenazzo is not 100% sure, but if you look at his...
We agree with that, Your Honor.
Okay. In the interview, between the time that the statements were allegedly made, which of the 1101B witnesses testified to events post that statement or post those statements?
Dorothy Melvin was at the center of those statements. She was the person that Vince Tenazzo was with. The closest... If Vince Tenazzo is correct about it being 94, 95, then if my memory serves me correctly, then I believe Melissa Grosvenor indicated that it was 95-ish when she had her incident with Mr. Spector. I could be wrong, and I'd need to verify that, but I'm just going by memory. And of course, Dorothy Melvin went on to describe on the cross-examination, as a matter of fact.
I'm going to go ahead and pause this because holy fucking shit. Meg P coming through here with 10 memberships. 10 fine folks just became part of the Buzz Nation. I love that, Meg. Holy shit. Let's see if I can get all these names right. The odds are not in my favor. Donna Minner coming in here, getting one of them things again. Donna, thank you so much. Donna's amazing also. Donna's an OG around these parts. Pretend Judge, Rosewater, CT Girl 5150, Maine, USA, Over the Top, Millie Riviera, Aaron Davies, Crystal DeSaro, and Jamie Hicks. Everyone get in here. Beers in the chat, liquor drinks in the chat. Probably nothing's in the chat.
Sober enough to know what I'm doing, and I'm drunk enough to really enjoy doing it.
That is incredible. Holy shit. Meg, I'm going to get you on there for the possibility. I'm not even sure if you know what we're doing here today. I've made a publicly buzzed holiday tea that I'm giving away this morning that once we get 12 folks on this wheel, we will be giving that thing a spin. But Meg, holy shit, you just now blew my mind with all of those memberships. Holy crap. And then right behind that, the beautiful Sheila Duffy, who has a shirt coming, 2 shirts, on the way to Ireland, coming through with $1. Thank you so much, Sheila. Boom, also getting on that son of a bitch. And we're not that far off from a spin already. Let me see where we're at. Let me just go ahead and see. I think we're 1 off, if I'm not mistaken. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We're 1 away from a spin this morning. We've already got there. Incredible. The fine and beautiful folks here in the Buzz Nation keeping this thing a-rolling.
Some continued contact with Mr. Spector, albeit on his part trying to contact her over the years subsequent to that, but no specific, with regard to Dorothy Melvin, no specific incident that I can recall post-dated that statement.
I'd like to also footnote that, as I recall, and actually it's interesting that you asked that question because Mr. Plord called me over the weekend and asked me to go through the 1101Bs on dating. The oldest one was in 84, 85, and they worked themselves, and Grosvenor, by the way, was 92 or 93.
Okay, like I said, I could have been mistaken.
No, it's not a criticism. I just know it because I was asked to do it. Mr. Plord's request over the weekend. And as I recall, Melvin was 94, 95 at approximately the same time or earlier, depending on whether Tenazzo was right at 95, 96, or 94, 95. Nothing thereafter.
Okay.
Oh, I got you.
I have some.
I
I
got you.
want to share some thoughts. And then tell
Meg,
you what I
thank you.
see
You're
some of the
incredible.
legal problems or
Very
legal
selfless.
issues are. When I originally considered the motion, and I want to talk about one part of the statement, I think I got very focused on the use of a specific word and the prejudicial value, et cetera, which in the meantime that word has been introduced
Put Pammy
through
on
another statement by Mr. Spector. However, there is allegedly part of the statement that Mr. Tonazo says that Mr. Spector made in one of the 2 incidents, and that is as follows. I'm looking specificity.
One statement appears at the second to last paragraph on page 2, and the other statement appears on the second full paragraph on page 3.
Which motion are you talking about here? You're talking about his statement? I'm looking for a copy of the Tonazo statement.
It's with our moving papers, it's Exhibit B.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay. Thank you. This would be from page 2, which I assume then it's going to be the first incident. And this is after they go back, they being Mr. Tonazo and Mr. Spector, entered Spector's limousine. Meanwhile, the driver went back inside the party to get Spector's keyboard. Spector began, quote, ranting and raving, again saying, quote, these fucking expletive deleted. They all deserve to die. They all deserve a bullet in their expletive deleted head. Now, the importance of that statement to me, and I'm trying, and in looking at my ruling, and then there's a second statement that also talks about putting a bullet in somebody's head. Having heard the evidence, the question to me, and now having the case in perspective, if you will, as opposed to offers of proof and whatnot, is to whether or not this is admissible, and it's one of the theories that the people originally set forth under 1250 is a state of mind, and then the defendant acting on that state of mind. Now, one, the legal considerations are it's a generic statement. It applies to, quote, all women as opposed to a specific victim. Just a second. Mr. Rosen, please. I'm trying to set forth some talking about theories and just sort of getting this out here and going through the thought process. You have an intervention of time, an intervening space of time, which would go to somewhere between 7 and 8 years. In looking at some of the cases that the people have cited, there has been some talk in some of the cases, not all, and there's been additional cases since the ones they cited, later cases. The courts have mentioned, without ruling that was an absolute consideration, but have sort of, in discussing the facts of the case, have talked about the statements being made relatively near in time to the event that takes place, which clearly you do not have in this case. I was also looking, and the reason I asked the dates about the 1101B witnesses was to see whether there had been intervening witnesses between the time of the statement and the time of the incident that's at question in this particular case. One of the things that I'm going to have to do before, and by stating this, I have not made up my mind on how to rule on this, but we've all been sort of making the assumption, because it's an offer of proof contained in a tape-recorded statement, whether the statement is reliable as Mr. Tonazo, what I have to hear him. I want to hear from him before I make a determination in this motion. It may turn out that the facts underlying it don't exist. They may exist. They may exist differently when it's subjected to cross-examination. I don't know. So in a hearing outside the presence of the jury, I want to hear Mr. Tonazo testify. And I want to be able to weigh his testimony, weigh his credibility, though I don't make the ultimate determination on credibility as far as the finder of fact, but it's something I want to consider in ruling on the motion. So I'm not going to rule on the motion at this time. I'm going to take it under submission. And if the people want to call Mr. Tonazo outside the presence of the jury, I'll hear that. And whether I deem that it's admissible at this time or depends upon what other facts are shown during the presentation, if any of the defense case that might make it admissible, I don't know at this time. So
Your
that's...
Honor, as you look out at your calendar here and with our break, do you have any suggestion of when it would be convenient for the court to hear this? And
Any Friday.
what happened here?
Any Friday would seem to be the best, if Wendy knows of certain half-days that we may have because of problems either with attorneys or jurors having pre-existing appointments, medical appointments or something. If it was a juror or jurors who had a half a day and we had a half a day available, that would be fine, if not a Friday.
Well, we will tentatively try
Talk it over with the defense, work out
for this Friday.
Because obviously Fridays, I have to attend to other matters.
I know, and that's why I'm saying...
The only other day that I know of at this time is July 11th, and we're, July 11th, they will not be here in the afternoon.
Okay, so July 11th may be perfect.
Well,
If we had our druthers,
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm saying discuss it with everybody and see what you have.
okay.
we will. And as the court mulls this over, I know that the court's just indicated that it now has a better ability to kind of put this in context.
I'm just giving you my thinking so that you can argue it appropriately, and that's, I haven't made a decision. It's that simple. I have not made a decision.
I understand that when I started to say something, and I did not mean to be
I understand.
rude to the court now has Mr. Tomlin's report, and it's appended as our exhibit. And if you look at it and you read it, it's clear that what is being said at the time is directed not at the general class of women. It's directed specifically at either a woman or, in one instance, for sure, because it
Yes,
says
I
right here,
understand
Spector
the
was
quote.
not angry with Melvin, but he was angry with someone.
Isn't this better addressed when Mr. Tonazo testifies?
Well, I just want to give you a bee under
Rosin
your bonnet
can't
to sort of
stop,
think
dude,
about
like-
while we're waiting for Mr. Tonazo.
It's tough to keep a bee under my bonnet.
I didn't comment on your hair. I commented on your hats. Okay, I didn't say a word about it.
Okay.
But it's clear that one.
Read the room, Rosin. Judge Dowhard, honest to God, is the fairest dude I've seen. Like, I've not been doing this for a long time. I'm about 2 years in now, and the more trials that I watch, sometimes we all have this indication, right? We either like the judge or we don't, or maybe we'll be some kind of middle ground. This is my favorite one. I think he's the most fair. I think that he weighs all options that are in front of him. He wants to hear everything. He's trying to be fair to both the defense and the prosecution, which sometimes it seems like the judge, a lot of times actually, is for one side of the, you can get a vibe, what do you do? And it's a lot of times the state side. But in this case, I don't necessarily feel it's way more even and down the middle with Judge Dowhard. And he's blatantly telling Rosin, who endlessly just can't stop beating his drum all the time, like, and I'm not against, a defense attorney beating his drum because that's his job, but Rosin should read the fucking room and be like, listen, he's going to give you an ample opportunity to get what you want. And we need to get this dude in here to actually discuss this. He wants to weigh the options, and he's going to jump right back in and piss him off a little bit further.
Right in the report, Spector was not angry with Melvin, but that he was angry with someone else.
And that may be, let's assume that Mr. Tonazo comes in and he says, look, I heard him, I could see, gestures or whatever. It's clear he was addressing, a specific person. It's just that much better for you, so let's worry about it when we get there. Okay?
I'm not sure we're at cross yet, but
See
we're
you
about to see
tomorrow
what's up.
9:30.
I want some more of this. It's a DeMaio. Here we go. Part 2 coming up right now. Again, thanks everyone for hanging out this morning. I think we're one name away from a wheel spin for the new holiday Publicly Buzzed shirt. Everyone hanging this morning, thank y'all so much. You know what we're doing up in here. What are we doing, huh? What are we doing, folks? I'm not messing around. That's
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
All right. The record will reflect that.
Now
the
we're
defendant is
gonna get
present
into
with
some
his
more
counsel,
shit here.
The district attorneys are present. The jurors and alternates are present. Dr. DeMaio, would you take the stand again, please, doctor? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hour 3 here.
All right, you're still under oath, and you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. DeMaio. I wanted to begin by asking you a follow-up question about some areas that we inquired on yesterday. And you talked about some statistics regarding suicides, and what was your source of information regarding some of your statistics?
Okay, so we're not on cross yet. We're still with the defense.
That you talked about yesterday.
The statistics on the suicide is a paper written by Dr.
Hey, Drew Gambino, before we do get in here, Drew Gambino just knocked off the wheel. We are going to get a spin this morning thanks to my man, Drew Gambino, coming through here with a $5 and a chance. You got it. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And then plus a statistician, and I'm the third author on the paper, and it's the largest series of suicides published. It's a study of a study of 1,704 suicides by gunshot wounds.
Nice, man. I'll get somebody to start the next wheel.
In 2001.
Put Pokemon on there.
And the
so
data
much, man.
is from the over 1,700 suicides reported. The other studies in the literature are, I think the only are maybe 250 cases or less. So this is the largest one that's ever been published.
And the largest one you're one of the authors of that publication?
Yes, I'm the third author.
And the other smaller studies, in other words, with less numbers of gunshot wound deaths, do all the studies seem to agree with each other?
Essentially. There was a study, actually, I think, that came out of California that said the same thing I did, that women prefer handguns over long arms.
Okay. Now, we just talked about research materials, data that is published in the literature, but as to this particular case, did you review any specific materials? And if you could give a list to the jury, essentially what you reviewed in this case, just in general terms.
Yes. I have a list here.
I think that's
Hopefully, I haven't gotten careless and thrown it out. Essentially, what I reviewed were the laboratory records generated by the Sheriff's Department, the scene investigation by Dr. Lee and Dr. James, the autopsy report, including including microscopic size of tissue and examination of the deceased's X-rays. Some emails that she sent, a calendar that belonged to her medical records, photographs of the scene and of the body, and then some of the reports by the experts that are for the defense, Dr. Bodden and Dr. Spitz, and a report by a toxicologist.
Okay. Did you also have occasion to look at any evidence at the Sheriff's Department laboratory?
Yes. I went to the Sheriff's Department, and I had a chance with the other experts to examine the evidence, and I also visited the scene at that time.
Okay. Now, based upon your review of this information, is this the type of information that you reviewed in, like, let's say, the other cases that you talked about?
Yes. Essentially what you want is an account of the circumstances leading up to and surrounding the death, medical records when applicable, and then you want the autopsy, which in this case, it's a fine autopsy. I don't disagree with the autopsy. I disagree with the interpretation. The photographs of the scene and of the body, and the laboratory reports. And then based on that, I came to my conclusion that it's a self-inflicted wound based on the objective evidence, and kind of staying away from, statements that, you can argue about.
Okay. Now, with reference to your review of the autopsy
His professional
report, and I
determination
want to
is that
focus in on
Lana Clarkson
cause of
killed
death
herself.
for purposes of this question as opposed to manner of death. Is there any question at all, that the cause of death was an interoral or inside the mouth gunshot wound?
No.
Was that apparent right from the beginning? In other words, that was readily apparent?
Right. I mean, you just open the mouth, you can see there's a stellate contact entrance wound on the top of the tongue. And the caps have been blown out, and so the gun was fired in the interior of the mouth.
Okay.
It was obvious grossly.
Okay. When you say grossly, just by visual examination?
By visual examination at the time of the autopsy.
Okay, so was the barrel of the gun, the muzzle of the gun where the bullet comes out, was it in contact with the tongue when the gun was fired?
Yes, because you can see it's a stellate type tear. That is, this is not a tangential, like a bullet plowing across the tongue. A tangential would be like if you have a chocolate cake with a lot of cream and then you run your finger across it. That's a tangential wound. This wound is a starburst wound. I don't know if the jury's seen photographs of the tongue.
We will.
You can see the stellate type wound, and that's due to the gas tearing up the tissue. Again, as I said, the gas comes out under high pressure, over 5,000 pounds per square inch. And that figure actually is conservative. That's based on work where they used non plus P. The traditional old-time .38 ammo is 5,000 pounds per square inch. The new plus P is going to be higher pressure, but no one's ever measured that pressure, so I can't tell it to you exactly.
Okay. And when you talk about the pressure, basically the pressure in the barrel that moves out of the barrel, and then once it gets into the outside the barrel, that's the 5,000 plus.
Right. The 5,000 is as the gas is emerging.
Okay.
And these figures that I keep quoting, I'm quoting from the medical and scientific literature. Anytime I start giving you numbers like temperatures and how far powder can travel and tissue can, they're all referenced in scientific articles published in peer-reviewed journals.
Okay. Doctor, when you looked at the objective physical evidence in this case, and I take it that's what the basis of your opinions are, did you come to a conclusion as to how Ms. Clarkson held the gun at the time that she discharged that weapon?
Yes, sir.
And what was that, if you could explain that to the jury?
Okay. The gun was oriented in the mouth so that it was going slightly upward, straight back in the midline, going just like this. Now, if you try to shoot yourself this way and you take a gun and turn it this way, it's kind of difficult. And this sounds silly, but people who kill themselves do it the easiest way. And the easiest way is, and it's done all the time, is you take the gun and you hold on to it so it's pointing to you. You put your fingers around the grip, you put your thumb on the trigger, and then you brace the gun with the other hand, and then you fire it. And this is very easy, and it would be easier for her because she had injury to her wrist. She had been in an automobile accident, and she had some loss of motion of her wrist. So it would be even more difficult to her to fire it, with one hand. And so it's, in my opinion, two hands, which goes along with the fact that there's blood on both hands and there's gunshot residue on both hands.
Yeah, I think the point last week, he was making out the gunshot residue being on her hands.
Doctor, I'm going to put up Defense Exhibit WW right now and ask you to recognize what this shows.
Yes, this is a page from the autopsy. It's a diagram showing the upward path.
And at the end of the show, I went off on an entire possibility of maybe she went fucking crazy.
Into the
Phil Spector's already acting like how Phil Spector does, trying to hold her hostage, bringing out the gun, trying to scare her. She's already a suicidal lady, already contemplating, as we know, in her own words, thinking about taking her life. and then just says, "Fuck you, you son of a bitch."
Is that
and does it in this
unusual
heated moment? Also, highly intoxicated as well.
It's unusual with these type of self-inflicted wounds that are inside the mouth.
No,
seen some wild shit.
The majority of the wounds go upwards and backwards. Sometimes, you know, you can.
I want to see the tongue. I want to see the actual pictures.
But the majority are upwards and backwards. So this is a fairly typical path or trajectory that you will see of a bullet going through the body.
Okay. Based upon the physical evidence, all of the debris that was inside the mouth that was from the discharge of the weapon, this being a 2-inch barrel, was the weapon, can you tell exactly how far it was inside the mouth?
It appears to have been most of the way. It's a 2-inch barrel, so, and you know, if you look at the wound, it's with the tongue, it has to have been in at least 1.5 inches, 2 inches, something like that.
Okay. And the trajectory of this particular bullet, can you explain to the jury what the path was and what structures in the body?
It's very animated.
If you could just give us a general background as to that.
Essentially, what the bullet did was it went straight back, hit the vertebral column at the upper portion where, you know, the vertebral column comes up and your skull rests on top of it, and it cut the cord, spinal cord at that point, and then went through the base of the skull and brain.
And do you agree with the findings of Dr. Pena and the autopsy description that the bullet did not exit the body anywhere?
Right. It's, you can see it on X-ray.
Okay. Doctor, did you have occasion to look at the scene photographs wherein it showed where Ms. Clarkson's body was located and the relative position of other items of evidence in this case?
Yes, sir.
Defendant's Exhibit RRRR, 4 R's.
4 R's, my God, this case. 4 R's, bro.
Showing you this exhibit, which is RRRR, and are you familiar with what this photograph shows?
Yes, this is a shot from behind.
See, I think her natural instinct would be to obey him, like he's got a gun, unless she's already, again, like I said, in a frantic moment of "fuck you." But yeah, I mean, also, I think the alcohol needs to come into play in the conversation a little bit more. Also, man, when people are fucking drunk, which I'm sure Phil Spector, we've heard these phone calls, it's been weeks now, but hearing Phil Spector speak when he's highly intoxicated turns into a completely different person. I think Phil Spector is a monster. I think Phil Spector fucking sucks as a person. All the testimony we've had, all the different ladies he's sexually assaulted and held hostage, because one lady testified in a hotel room she was actually just straight up sexually assaulted. So, but yeah, what if it was just the perfect mix of you done fucked up, huh? You done fucked with the wrong lady who was in the wrong state of mind, who was already done with this shit, and here we are, and now you're sitting in this fucking chair, dude, because you couldn't, first of all, you know, handle your own cock, because I'm sure that's what it all came through that night, and probably is so fucking drunk he wouldn't be able to get up anyways. Let's just like be super fucking honest. But he wanted her to stay. He didn't want to be alone. And you know, you met your match on this one. Lana Clarkson's like, oh yeah, bro. Also, this is all just me opining out loud for everybody. And I do want everyone's opinions in the chat. I want to, you know, if you have different opinions, don't be afraid to voice them, guys.
In the staircase.
Okay, and there's a placard that says a number 5. Was it your understanding that that was some type of a tooth material or fake tooth material?
Yes.
And was it also your understanding that on the stairs, a little bit up and to the right, and then also center, that there were 2 other particles of either dental material or tooth material that were found?
Yes, it was, you know, ejected from by the gases under high pressure, ejected out of the mouth forward.
Was it also your understanding that the gun, the Colt Cobra .38 caliber, that there was embedded in the part of the site of that weapon some natural tooth material?
Right. What would happen is if you see the weapon fire, I think we saw it in those 2 photos, it recoils back and upward. And so after she fired the gun, it recoiled and scraping some of the tooth material also.
Okay, so the way that the teeth were that were displaced, there was some artificial tooth material that was on their caps or crowns or whatever you call them, correct? Okay, now those were blown out by the explosion of gases.
Right, those would have been blown out before the gun recoiled and went back. Because if you remember the photograph, the gun's still horizontal and you have the big gas cloud. So the gas cloud comes out, the bullet comes out, the gas cloud comes out, and then the gun begins to, I was about to say slowly, compared to the bullet, it slowly goes backwards and upwards and recoils. And that's when the front sight slammed into the remnants of the front teeth.
Okay, Dr. DeMaio, I want to show you a video of a .38 Colt Cobra being fired by, and we'd ask that this be marked next in order.
I think, is this something the prosecution has seen?
They have. And I told him I was going to use it, but we can approach.
Yeah, that's me, honestly. I could really see both ways right now. Like, I think this is the most interesting because this has been the most that I've been able to see it the other way. I've been pretty hardcore that Phil Spector, especially from all the other testimony and even the other experts to a point. But I mean, and it's good to question it at the end of the day, right? Like, I don't want to be hardcore on the state or the defense's side. I want to see an argument and have to be able to honestly mull it over in my own head a little bit. But I can see, at least up till now, we still have half a trial left. Take that into consideration, guys. But I can see why the jury probably had a lot of questions just from last week's episode, just from the first bit of the testimony from Dr. DeMaio. But again,
we'd ask that this.
I'm in no way fully on this side as of yet. But I am going to, opine regularly in both directions. I think that that's honestly the most fair thing to do, anyways, right? Like, you kind of have to weigh both options equally. It's hard a lot of times, and especially when you have a case like this, you know how brutal it is, right? And you know the situation she's in, and me basically hearing lady after lady after, I think it was four ladies in the very beginning of this trial, all coming through and having identical stories and all leading up to what happened to Lana Clarkson, except they all didn't end up dead, right? This one's a little bit different. The exact same scenario, the exact same situation leading all the way up until this moment. Essentially, like, he wanted them to stay. He didn't want to be alone, and for him to get his way, he was willing to put a gun in their face and hold them hostage, which is fucking insane. So yeah, and I do 100% think Phil Spector is off his rocker as well. So. But what if, right? I'm gonna go back to the what if. This night, he really met his match with someone who was like, "Listen, dude, I actually don't give a fuck," but at the same time, me in that position, even if you are in the end days, if you're going to be ending this, I'm done. She had the headaches that were just, killing her, essentially. We've seen the writings in the diary. Even people that she had talked to, like, she was going to be she wanted to end this. So, I don't know, man. Like, it's an interesting one. That makes it a whole nother, like, a whole new spin on the entire tale. But, again, nobody was actually there. So we kind of have to go through this long ass process, and again, we're only halfway through this trial, so I have in no means whatsoever determined that this is my final stance at all. But it's fun to kind of discuss it.
Video be marked next in order, Your Honor.
Septuple B.
Oh my God, this is like number. I think this is 120 of like 230. So like.
Thank you.
A while.
Okay, hold on. No, it's not.
What we got? We got a demonstration.
Yeah, go.
Okay, let's play that. Well, let me ask you this question. Dr. Meyer, you've seen this video before?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, could you tell the jury what was shown in this video?
Right. Essentially, the gun is being held this way. It's being fired. You can see the gas cloud, and then it recoils up. and a recoil up and a recoil backwards.
Okay, and is this an actual Colt Cobra, the weapon identical to the one in this particular case?
That's my understanding, yes.
With P ammunition, but not plus P ammunition?
Right.
Okay. So plus P ammunition would have more...
A little more recoil, might go up a little higher.
Okay. I want to play it again. I want to ask you a
promote
question
that,
about
dude.
the
Let me know.
what appears to be some
Sounds good.
type of a flame that comes out of the end of the muzzle. And if you could take a
Plenty
look
of
and
them
focus
out
on
there.
that part of it here.
Okay, go.
Including some of mine.
Take your finger off the trigger when you do that, please.
Everyone. Yeah, go.
Okay, and when that gun is fired, is it typical that there's actually...
Okay, what that flame is the gases.
At all times, Dr. DeMaio is just raising his eyes. Yeah, yeah. What do you think? At all times.
That are emerging under high pressure.
I can't even do my eyebrows
The
like that.
gases, some of the gases present are like carbon monoxide. They hit the atmosphere and then they kind of ignite. So the gases are the flame is not a flame; it's luminescent gas. So you're seeing the gas cloud at the end of that gun.
Okay. Now, in this particular case, with this particular weapon, that gas cloud and that luminescence of the flame, as you've just described it, that explosion is occurring inside Lana Clarkson's mouth. Is that correct?
Right. The gas is expanding inside her mouth.
Okay. And getting back to the teeth, because I want to ask some questions about the location, and we could put up exhibit PP, 4 Ps. This is another view showing at the scene of Lana Clarkson's legs, and then the items of evidence that are marked the 5, and then an item on the stairs, the higher item, either 10 or 11. How did those go so far? In other words, what caused them to go so far?
Essentially, they're being propelled by gas. As I said, that the gas from the burning of the powder exits under high pressure. There's turbulence, and then it seeks to exit the mouth or the oral cavity, and some exits the mouth, some exits the nose.
Like my theory right now is, it's not even my actual theory, just a theory that I've come up with kind of in accordance with his testimony, is the freak out, right? Like that's the only way that I could see. And I think Oasis Cat saying that they couldn't see this. Hold on, I want to pop it up. Just want to get everybody's opinions in here. Lana was beautiful. I don't believe for 1 second she would risk shooting herself in the face. And what if she lived and ended up with facial damage? Yeah, great point. Like, the only way that I can really see this happening is I'm taking a lot of factors into play. I'm taking the factor that she already wanted to end herself, maybe not in this fashion, but still that's there. She ends up back at the house of Phil Spector, who all of a sudden, they're both drunk, and she's starting to see a different side of this person, right? And then he brings out the gun. And she's also, remember, really fucking drunk. She's also highly intoxicated as well. And she's going to be, just think about that moment of, I'm not going to be a damsel in distress, right? She's already fucking done. And she's just like, listen. But again, that's out there. That's an insane, I'll even admit, that's out there on the ledge. But it is a possibility, right? Like, that's kind of like, his testimony brought me to that part, to at least that type of theory. And I right now have two different theories. Just that one and the possibility, probably the more likely one, if I'm going to be completely 100% honest, that he probably did shoot her. I don't know, though. I don't know, man.
When I
actually also kind of have to admit that I enjoy having the two extremely different theories, though, in my head to kind of bounce off of with the rest of the trial to continue here, and more experts to take their opinion into account with.
Yes, under high pressure,
exited.
It broke
pay
off
a little
the
bit more
caps
attention here
and propelled the caps full.
So I'm not sold on that.
Towards and onto the stairs.
It's me trying to rationalize how it could happen.
With this explosion in the mouth, as you've described it, would it be the same forces that are going to cause tissue and blood to be ejected from the mouth?
Yes, it's the same thing. Essentially, you're getting the gas coming out, a 5,000 pounds plus per square inch. It expands, it tears tissue, it picks up blood, it picks up tissue, it picks up gunshot residue, it picks up anything it can, including the caps, and then propels them outward from the nostrils and from the mouth.
Okay, so from...
Oh, wow. Kathy coming through the Venmo machine. Sundays are better with Pastor Steve and Buzzed Brethren. Thank you so much, Kathy. Let me get you on here real quick. You're starting out the next will. I think we already got 2 names on this second will here. Kathy, thank you so much. Appreciate the hell out of that. You have no clue. Seriously. Thank you so much. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing, guys. Let me give you a little bit of the old technology. Everybody's got a price. Everybody's going to pay. If anybody doesn't know who Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, is, he's a wrestler.
Is it your understanding that, based upon the physical evidence, that Ms. Clarkson was in the chair at the time that the gun went off?
I bet they ask him. I bet we'll get there.
Oh, yes. There's no doubt about that.
They usually ask that question.
And what's the distance between where she was in the chair to the top particle of evidence, approximately, if you know?
I think it's something like 12, 13, 14 feet, something like that.
Okay. And there's other particles that are closer, maybe in a little bit different direction.
Right.
Does that support the notion that she was in that chair at the time that the gun was fired? In other words, the tooth material and the tooth particles, whether they're real or not real, their caps are in the place they would be if they were blown out of the mouth?
Yes, I don't think there's any question she was sitting in the chair at the time.
Okay, and when they were blown out of the mouth, did they cause damage to the inside of her mouth in any way?
They produced some markings on the inner aspect of the lip and such.
Okay.
But nothing significant.
Okay. Now,
that's a good point, too. That's a good point, too, Bassett. That's a great point. When the picture we see of Lana Clarkson, aftermath, she has her jacket on also. If I remember correctly, the jacket's on and the purse strap is, or it might have fallen down, but clearly her purse was on as if she was leaving. That's a great point, Bassett. That's a great point.
It occurs in the mouth when the gun is fired inside the mouth.
She was clearly trying to leave.
Do the gases dissipate inside the body in any way?
No. What happens is they're going to go the place of less resistance, which is the open mouth and the open nostrils. I mean, they don't go down the esophagus because the esophagus is collapsed. I mean, it opens up when you start eating and the food goes down, but it's collapsed, and material will go down. And it's not going to go down the airway. I've never seen any gunshot residue on the airway. One of the reasons may be that on the top of the airway you have a little flap called the epiglottis, and that's why you don't choke when you swallow food. The epiglottis is pushed down, and the gas is probably pushing it down, and that's the reason why it doesn't get in.
Itching.
And so the airway is closed off by the gas just closing the door.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that the nose, that stuff, blood, tissue, saliva, brain material gets blown out of the nose.
Right.
Both nostrils, presumably. Is that correct?
Right.
And you see in some of the autopsy pictures and scene pictures a lot of blood and stuff coming out of the nose. Does that suggest to you that at the time of discharge or immediately after the discharge that stuff was expelled out of the nostrils of the nose as well as the mouth?
Oh, yeah, it has to be. It has to be. Because because the nostrils are open, the back of your mouth connects with your nasal cavity, which connects with the nostrils, and it comes out. It comes out. Yeah, there's no question about that.
Dr. DeMaio, you and your experience, you've seen interoral gunshot wounds several hundred times. Is that correct? Right. Is this something typical that you would see, this effect?
Oh, yes. I mean, this is, you see it all the time.
Okay. Dr. DeMaio, with reference to the victim in this case and her hands, I want to show you an exhibit that's marked.
Here's what I'm interested in.
PP. And ask if you recognize this particular photograph.
Like her hands. Uh-oh. First shot of Phil today, guys. Oh, God, that son of a bitch. Still lurking, old Phil.
Do you see this particular photograph? Well, that's...
Yes, this is the right hand with the...
Live shot of Phil. Be nice to see these pictures.
We'll talk about this one now. You see this hand, the right hand, and it looks like there's some type of a defect in the right thumb. If we could highlight that particular portion.
Yes, what she had was artificial nail, and you can see part of the artificial nail has been broken off at some time.
Okay, was there any evidence in the laboratory records or any of the forensic testing that suggested she had blood or tissue under any of these nails?
No, I mean, you can take a look at the fingers. This finger in the area of the thumb is pristine. There's no blood, there's no soot, there's no powder, there's no tissue. This is an absolutely clean finger with sharp, broken margin.
The acrylic overlaying her fingernails.
Right, that's what I mean, the broken margin, the acrylic.
Okay. Doctor, let me ask you a hypothetical question.
I will say this, that I would suspect anyone to have to do it with two hands if you're doing it backwards. If the gun is backwards in your hands, barrel this way, like if you're holding the gun normal, like that's the normal way, and you're turning it all the way around. Also, you have to, like in my theory, this has to happen fucking fast. Like this is her going, fuck you. I don't know if the gun's already there, and like she just, see, that's actually making me kind of honestly go back on the possibility of her doing it, because I'm trying to like make it work in my own head, the possibility of her doing this. So if like she had it backwards and the muzzle's going into her face like this, she would have to use two thumbs in my head, in my mind, to push in on the trigger. Because one, I feel like it's going to possibly go, it's a small gun, granted, but still, like that's a weird thing to do with even just one hand. And I don't know, I could see out in my head, you're doing it with two thumbs backwards. But in the situation, in the actual moment, it would be so fucking chaotic. So I don't know. I'm kind of going back
with
on
reference to this particular
theory just
thumb
from
and the
logic.
broken acrylic nail. If you would assume that that was in front of the muzzle, and the muzzle being where it was in the mouth, would it look like this in this exhibit?
Okay. It's impossible for this finger to have been in the mouth. And I don't say impossible many times, but this is impossible. And here's the reason why. If you have this finger in the mouth at the time of discharge, you're going to get first that jet of flame at about 1400 degrees centigrade. If you did that and it hit that acrylic, it's kind of like putting a match to a piece of plastic. What happens? It's going to burn. And this isn't burnt. Look at the sharp broken margins. That's the first thing. The second thing is, what you're doing, saying, is you're putting your finger in a whirlpool of blood, tissue, soot, and powder. And this finger and the whole length of the finger would be covered with blood, soot, powder, and tissue. On top of which, if you remember the photographs we showed of the gun with the flame, you could see the flame from the cylinder gap. To put your finger in the mouth, you're going to have to put your hand essentially over the cylinder gap. And coming out the cylinder gap is hot gases, soot, powder, and sometimes metal shavings from the bullet. So if you look at the palm, you would see at a minimum a burn. Or if with a real hot load, you might actually see a tear in the skin from the cylinder gap. But you'd see the soot also, and the powder, which would be embedded into the hand. So this finger could not have been in the mouth. It's impossible, period.
Now, this piece of acrylic is not natural. It's does it have a melting point or at some?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I know that the flame is about 1,200 degrees, And let's see, I think lead melts at about 300, and I have a feeling the acrylic melts and burns at significantly less than what lead does.
Okay.
So, I mean, I have absolutely no doubt that this is going to burn.
So there would be no way for this to have been blown off or knocked off by the muzzle of the gun and the firing of the bullet?
Right, by being in the mouth at the time of discharge, it's impossible.
Dr. DeMaio, I'm going to show you Exhibit Y now. We're going to move to another portion of Lana Clarkson's hand that was photographed, and I'm going to show you this particular exhibit, Exhibit Sextuple Y, 6 Ys, and ask you whether you're familiar with this particular photograph that was documented at the scene.
Yes, it's of the left hand.
Okay, of the left hand. And you've demonstrated for the jury how you felt that Ms. Clarkson was holding the weapon. This particular discoloration that's in the photograph, that's essentially right here. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, it's a blood droplet that's hit at an angle, and it's going towards the back of a hand.
Okay, so would it be going in this direction here where this little tail is, that
right,
little dot?
Right, the big part is where the long part is where it hit, sliding along, going towards the back.
Is this the type of blood spatter that you see when you do autopsies, do you see this type of thing in bodies?
Yes, you see it on the hands, and you see it on clothing as well.
Okay. There was some demonstrations that were done with some other witnesses, and I'll come up to you to do that, but that basically posed this scenario regarding this particular exclamation point drop, and if it could be enlarged again.
You're blocking some of the witnesses.
I'm sorry.
The jurors.
Yeah, I'll move over. If Ms. Clarkson had her hands in this position, would you see that type of blood spatter?
No, because obviously it doesn't. It would have to go around the corner to get and make a nice right angle turn, and the blood's not going to do that.
Does this particular
have you heard about the magic bullet, sir?
Is it consistent with Lana Clarkson holding the hands as you demonstrated?
Yes, if you hold the hand this way, the blood comes out from the nostril and the mouth. It hits, and it's going this way towards the back.
Okay. Now, in addition to this blood spatter that was on the hands, there were other descriptions of other blood spatters that were on the hands and wrists of Lana Clarkson. Is that correct? And how did that blood spatter on the hands come into play as far as your opinion as to how the physical evidence supports the self-inflicted wound as opposed to otherwise?
Well, what I said is the interpretation of this case is kind of like a picture puzzle where each little piece of the puzzle is meaningless. It's when you put them all together. And so what I'm saying is the blood on the hand is consistent with back splatter. It's back spatter. And so when you put it all together, the intraoral nature of the wound, which is 99% suicide, the gunshot residue on the hand, the blood spatter on the hand, what you have is objective evidence that is most consistent with a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Okay. Doctor, I want to now move on to a description of the inside of the mouth and the tongue, and I want to show an exhibit that essentially is a diagram from the autopsy done by Dr. Pena.
Bill,
Ask if you could take a look
every
at that.
time, you son of a bitch, you scare the shit
mark
out.
this as an exhibit?
I believe it's already marked.
Okay.
I'm going to get the number. It's People's.
There's a QR code to go do a little shopping.
24,
Maybe you need a little holiday
44.
gifts for some family. A Murder Church beanie. That was the hottest thing last holiday
You
season.
recognize this exhibit,
You need to get a beanie
People's
up there.
exhibit, trial exhibit 44?
Keep everybody warm.
Okay, looking at the tongue diagram that's depicted
Dr.
here.
Vincent DeMaio is
was
looking
this
right at it. He's like, yeah.
Tongue area actually.
He's looking at it like he wants to fuck it. And he's giving it the eyebrows. He's like, man, that scan me code looking damn fine this morning.
Excised and photographed by the coroner's office, Dr. Pena and his staff?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay, and what does it show as far as the damage to the tongue? This particular diagram first, we'll go to this one.
It shows a stellate wound on the top of the tongue, a bruise on the left side, and some bruising on the back of the tongue, at the, you call the base of the tongue.
Have a wig change here.
Now,
real
Dr.
quick.
DeMaio, I want to focus your attention on the bruise that's on the left of this particular exhibit and talk to you about the cause and mechanism for this particular bruise. There was some testimony in this case by Dr. Pena after he was called by Mr. Jackson in the DA's office as to what caused the bruises on the tongue, particularly the bruise on the left. And do you, based upon your training and your experience in the field of forensic pathology, particularly with respect to intraoral or inside the mouth gunshot wounds and the explosions that occur with relation to that, do you have an opinion as to how these bruises were made?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and what is your opinion, doctor?
It's due to the discharge of the gun and the high pressure. The whole thing, again, is the gun is resting on the top of the tongue, which is slightly curved, and you're seeing your stellate wound. Out of the muzzle comes pressure. Comes gas under 5,000 plus. What it's going to do, as I said, it expands the cheeks and corners of the mouth, and the pressure has slammed the tongue against the bony structure of the mouth and has actually cracked the orbit, the palate, because there's a fracture on the top of the palate, and that's due to the high pressure essentially blowing out. If you used a shotgun instead in this, not only would you blow out the palate, you'd blow out, or probably blow off the whole top of the head. And it's pressure, gas pressure under thousands of pounds per square inch that hurls aside the tissue, tears tissue, ruptured vessels, and fractures bone. In fact, with high-velocity rifles, a bullet can go right between the ribs, not hit the ribs, and the pressure-generated fracture. These are pressure injuries.
So lucky.
Dr. DeMaio,
obviously not lucky to get shot at all.
Testimony you gave regarding the pressures and the damage
maybe not.
that is
Maybe the ribs
caused
would
by those
protect the
pressures.
organ, right?
Have you seen that type of damage in other cases that you've done autopsies on, your personal experience?
Oh, yes. I mean, you see it not only in the tongue, but anywhere you have this gas expanding because it slams into the organs and then pushes them against other things.
Like the teeth and the other parts of the
Right.
mouth? Okay,
That's what's going on.
With reference to, if I could have another exhibit, Defendant's Exhibit 00, put up on another diagram from the autopsy. If we could have the bottom left-hand corner highlighted. What does this portion of Exhibit 00 demonstrate as far as the inside of the mouth and the damage that occurred at that particular location?
What it's showing you is the hard palate, with the top. Sorry. These are supposed to be your teeth, and that would be, the front of your mouth. And then what you're having here is you're getting a fracture of the hard palate. Okay. And it's due to the blast effects.
Okay, I'm going to show you a picture here. I'll show the people. In the autopsy there, and these are quite graphic pictures, but they took pictures of the tongue itself, and the tissue was excised. Is that something that's typically done?
Yeah, actually, when you do a complete autopsy, you're supposed to take the tongue out.
Okay.
Even if it was a natural death, you're supposed to. It's part of the autopsy. It goes along with the structures of the neck, so that's a standard routine thing.
Okay, and it's not a very pretty picture to look at, I take it. Is that correct? From most people's
from the jury's perspective, right. After you see your first couple of hundred ones,
Okay. If we could We've got two pictures we're going to look at regarding this. The first one is scan 10070, and we'd ask that be marked next in order.
Septuple C.
Okay. If we could highlight just the tip of the tongue area.
Yo, Jessica, good morning.
Now this is the
Dude, the weather's
bruised
been messing with my
area
ass.
over to the right is the
Not a fan.
one that is in the diagram by Dr. Payton. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there actually bruising also on the left?
Yeah, there's a small bruise there. It looks like it's a cut, associated cut from impacting a tooth.
Okay, so you've got bruising on the left and the right of the tongue, and basically
And at the base also.
and right here.
No, that's your stellate wound.
Okay. So, and then up here, there's bruising that kind of goes in a semicircle arrangement, is that
Right,
correct?
yes.
Is all of that caused by this explosion that occurs in the mouth?
Yeah, it's the pressure causing the tongue to impact the bony structure of the mouth.
Okay. Now, we have a minute. We're going to have another picture has to be marked next in order also of the tongue, and just a little clearer picture from the autopsy.
Septuple D.
Okay, this is sextuple D, and this is seen a little bit more clear, this mark that's done by the tooth that's on the left side here, the right side of the diagram, and then the bruised area over here. Is that correct?
Right, it'd be the right side, the tooth mark is on the right side of the tongue, the larger bruise is on the left side.
And this particular, is this the stellate wound that you explained to the jury that occurs because of the explosion?
Yes, that's due to the bullet
Morning,
and the gases coming out, ripping the tongue.
Okay, and is there any evidence, physical evidence, in this particular specimen that was taken out of Ms. Clarkson that the bullet actually, did a trench or did something to contact the tongue?
A tangential, no. As I said, a tangential wound, chocolate cake, run your finger across and you've got this gutter-like, that's what a tangential wound. That's, if the tongue had been straight flat, and the bullet had gone straight across, you would have seen a gutter wound. Here, the tongue was probably bent a little like that. The muzzle was against here. The gas went in and ripped it, and the bullet also did the same thing. And you have to have the gas and not just the bullet, because the tongue is solid muscle, and it's very difficult to injure solid muscle.
We have another three-dimensional exhibit that we're going to ask to be marked next in order, Your Honor.
Septuple E.
Okay. E?
E.
I want to show you this. Ask you to take a look at it and tell me whether this is a three-dimensional model of the tongue as far as the, and does it comport generally to the injuries that Ms. Clarkson had?
Is it the one that looks like a
on her
cobra?
tongue?
Can I take it out?
Sure, take it
My
out.
favorite. Oh! Straight up tongue.
Yes, it does. You
Damn,
can
is this a
see-
sex toy? What the
Before,
fuck?
just answer that question first.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, if you could demonstrate, maybe stand in front of the jury and
That looks like a fucking little alien.
demonstrate how the bullet caused the injury.
It almost looked like, hold on, God, I can't go backwards. It almost looked like when he had it down low, I was like, oh God! Oh shit! That looks bad. I'm gonna take a little snip of that and post it. That doesn't look like nothing weird's going on, does it?
Before, just answer that question first.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, if you could demonstrate, maybe stand in front of the jury and demonstrate how the bullet caused the injury and the damage to the tongue of Ms. Clarkson.
Okay. Actually, if the tongue was straight like this, you would have this tangential wound ripping down the thing. But the tongue at the time of discharge was curved, so part of the gas went in and the bullet and tore and produced the stellate wound. And then the gas pressure slammed the tongue against the bony structure. And it was producing a large bruise on the left, some small bruises on the back, And then on this side, another bruise. Looks almost like a cut from a tooth having impacted at the time.
And why don't you come to this end, and I'll ask you a few questions. So basically, on the left, as it's facing the jury, is the larger bruise, and then there's a mark on the right side that's actually where the teeth make a mark actually on the tongue?
Right, right. And at the time of discharge, it was kind of curved like this, you can see, and how the bullet plowed into the tongue along with the gas, producing the stellate wound.
Dr. DeMaio, if you could put that on the witness stand, I want to ask you a few questions about the notion or the hypothesis that a gun was used to cause a blunt force trauma to the tongue and cause a bruise. In your opinion, could that happen?
No, it's not possible. You're talking about jamming the gun into the mouth.
Right. You were here and you were actually present when Mr. Jackson talked to Dr. Pena about his opinions concerning that. And I want to ask you basically whether you think that's possible to happen.
No, it has to do with the anatomical structure of the tongue. We all bruise on the outside, and the reason is you can pick up your skin. And underneath here is muscle. I'm picking up the skin of my forearm. And what happens is there are blood vessels running from the surface of the skin down to where the muscle is in. And so what happens is if you bang it,
never forget,
and there's any shearing force, you tear the blood vessels. And then you get a bruise. But the tongue is different. The tongue is solid muscle. And there's no skin that comes up. You can't pull anything off your tongue. And so what happens is the blood vessels in the tongue are completely enclosed by muscle, which are actually acting as protective guards and shock absorbers. So to injure the tongue requires a tremendous amount of force to bruise it. I mean, you can bite it, that's one thing. But to bruise it, a lot of force, because you don't have the mobile skin. And even then, come on, hit my hand like this, I'm not going to get a bruise. So you need a lot of force. Now, the only way so if you wanted to bruise the tongue with a gun, you'd have to take a swinging arc, and you'd have to somehow hit the tongue with a real hard force, the end of the muzzle, obviously, and hit it again.
I wanted to also look that up because you always hear about you're going to swallow your tongue if you're having a seizure or something. And this says that that's not a thing. It says, you cannot swallow your tongue. The tongue is anchored to your mouth by tissue and muscles, making it impossible to swallow. And then whatever the fuck this is a small piece of tissue located under the tongue and behind the teeth. Okay. Also prevents the tongue from rolling back into the throat. The myth that people can swallow their tongue during a seizure while unconscious or while asleep is common. However, it's impossible for the tongue to block the throat during these events, making it difficult to breathe. It's possible. Okay, got you. It can, I guess, lay back and block the airway. If someone was having a seizure, you should help them to a safe position, gently roll them onto one side, remove any nearby hazards, and put something under their head. And I guess hold the tongue down, right? Like, with something. Putting something in the mouth of someone having a seizure is dangerous and can choke them. So no, never mind. So what the fuck? I guess you try to lay them on their side.
Against the bone. But then you've got to do this. Think about it.
Yo, Simmy,
by
in the house.
Going in between the teeth. Because the teeth aren't broken in. So you'd have to have the mouth wide open. The gun swung by a baseball bat. And then as soon as it entered the mouth, you have to almost stop, because if you're swinging like that, it's like swinging a baseball bat. You can't just stop it immediately. It keeps going. And so if it kept in this way, if somehow by a miracle you miss the teeth, the rest of the gun is going to slam into your lips, and you're going to have big swollen lips, and the whole frame of the gun hitting would then break your teeth, and caps, because she has caps which we know have been blown out, and so this material would be thrown into the mouth. So it's not really possible to do it this way. The logical and the right explanation is the gun goes off in the mouth, the tongue is hurled by the gas against the bony structure, and that's where it's getting the bruising.
Okay. And did the same forces cause that crack on the top of the mouth, the hard palate?
Yes.
Okay. Give the members of the jury sort of an analogy as to what type of forces would cause bruising in the tongue, such as what occurred in this particular case.
Well, what I'm kind of telling you is, you know, well...
Yeah, I wonder what's called on his
like,
facial.
You know, setting off a cherry bomb in the mouth or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening. You're setting off a controlled explosion, which is which the discharge of the gun, with gases coming out at 5,000 pounds per square inch and greater. They aren't greater in this case. But the exact number is, you know, I don't know.
Okay. I take it you've done autopsies on people that have been involved in motor vehicle accidents where they receive a lot of force, and I take it that bruising is not uncommon in those situations. Is that correct?
Well, even bruising of muscle isn't that common. You know, you really have to get a lot of force to bruise muscle, because muscle is really very a good shock absorber, and it protects the blood vessel.
I'm pretty sure that's in the video.
All the bruise is a torn blood vessel. The blood leaks out. And when it's completely surrounded by muscle, which is acting as a shock absorber, you don't get much bruising. You can get some, but you don't get it. But it takes a lot of force.
With reference to the bruising in the tongue, all of the bruising, do you feel it's all caused by this explosion in the mouth?
Oh, it has to be. It is. It's all due to the discharge of the gun in the mouth.
With reference to your personal experience, have you seen similar type bruising in other inside-the-mouth gunshot wounds?
I'm not sure if that was my
yes.
phone or
I mean, you
what
know, most people don't even record it. I mean, it's just so common.
Dr. Meyer, I've got another exhibit that is a three-dimensional exhibit. It's actually a demonstrative exhibit of a kit that shows the trajectory and asks that it be marked next in order.
Set couple F.
We'll mark the box, Your Honor. I have a storage device for it.
Okay.
Did you say that?
F.
Put this on the witness stand here, and then we've got a probe, essentially, that will,
What are they doing here?
in the shape of what purports to be the end of a barrel. If you could
Bill's head off
position this and show the members of the jury. First of all, does this,
You know what are they doing?
is it a
Is this gonna be the barrel?
piece of evidence that will allow you to show the trajectory of the bullet and the injury that was that occurred to Ms. Clarkson?
Yes.
Okay, you've seen this before, I take it, Doctor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you could put the probe in and position it, and does it show part of the bony structure of the Ms. Clarkson, and it's opaque so you can see through it?
Yes. You can see how it's producing the wound on the top of the tongue. Then the bullet goes in through the upper cervical vertebrae and cuts the cord. And you can see it's a straight front to back upward trajectory.
Okay, can you show a side view of that, maybe walk in front of the jurors so that they can see what you're explaining to them?
Okay. What I'm saying is, well, let's look from the front. Notice how it goes straight back. And again, that's why I'm saying it's kind of hard to throw your hand around like that. Okay? And then what it does is if you look, there's the injury on the tongue. There. And you can see what the bullet has done. The barrel is here. The gun discharges. The gas tears. The bullet continues upward and backward through the spine, cutting the cord into the base of the neck.
So the bullet actually hits bone in the spinal column, is that correct?
Yes, it hits bone, it hits the vertebral column, hits the base of the skull, and cuts the spinal cord.
And then the probe actually causes the muzzle of the gun to go in further, but basically the gun then goes in reverse after the bullet is fired.
Right. I'm sticking this in too deep because, because that's the way it does. And you can see how the path is from there.
You can have a seat, and I'll ask you a few follow-up questions. Yesterday, we talked about gunshot residue and how it is factored into your evaluation of the objective evidence in this particular case. Does the deposition of gunshot residue, in other words, its distribution, does it make a difference of how it's distributed?
Oh, you mean on the hands? Well, on
the hands, the clothing, whatever.
Well, if you're close enough, you're going to get the gunshot residue.
Okay.
And when you're real close, you're going to get a lot of gunshot residue.
So the amount is a significant consideration.
Right. As I said, one gunshot residue particle is a positive test, but it has no significance because it's so easy to acquire that by contamination. And what you're really looking for when you do this test is a semi-quantitation, which wasn't done in this case, and it's not done in many places, in which you can compare the levels of the residue on the fronts and backs and see if there's a difference. And that gives you an idea how hands are positioned.
Okay. Do different guns
I'm going to take just a slight break here because this popped through my Twitter and it's pretty funny and also pretty crazy. Look at this guy. It says, first of all, man who killed his family escaped the interrogation room while no one was looking. What the fuck, dude? He's like, yeah, I'm out. I'm out, son. And he talked to you. What the fuck?
Just the type of weapon. Do they emit different amounts of gunshot residue depending on the mine?
Yes, it depends upon the style of the weapon. Thus, revolvers emit more gunshot residue because of the cylinder gap, which is not present in a semi-automatic pistol. So in a semi-automatic pistol, which usually has a port open on the right, you tend not to get much gunshot residue on the left if it's a closed frame weapon. Then there's a difference between what's called lock breech automatics and blowback automatics. And then you have to factor in the ammunition. Some ammunition,
I should have 10 minutes here. I'm going to use the bathroom. I'll be right back.
Gunshot residue than other. And then, on top of it, you have to factor in the weapon. I mean, when they manufacture these weapons, like revolvers, there's supposed to be a certain amount of distance between the cylinder and the barrel. But it's always plus or minus. And then if you fire the gun a lot of times these things, get expand a little. So some guns spit out more gunshot residue than others. Some calibers do. Depends on the model of the gun, and there's a lot of variation on this.
I want to move to a different area and subject here, Dr. DeMaio, and ask that this picture be marked next in order 1.201.
September G.
Dr. DeMaio, I want to talk about what happens. You've demonstrated and shown the jury the path of the bullet and described exactly where the bullet went, what structures were damaged, and how they were damaged. And now I want to know and ask you about the area of what effect and the timing of that effect it had on Lana Clarkson and her ability to function and move and so forth. And I take it you don't quarrel with the idea that basically she died quickly as a result of this injury?
Essentially, death as we defined it was instantaneous.
Okay, and when you say death was instantaneous, how do you define it?
Essentially, the spinal cord was transected in the upper cervical region, and the base of the skull was injured, and so her brain activity was gone. Now, the heart can keep on beating. Actually, you can have with judicial hangings where they used to break the people's neck and they died immediately, the heart sometimes went on beating for 20, 30, 40 minutes. The heart is independent, so your heart could beat without the brain.
Okay, and when you say that there's no brain activity, is that because the spinal cord was cut, or let's say somebody shoots themselves in the temple of the head, does the brain also cease?
Right. It's the same thing when you hit certain areas, like in the temple. If you get the basal ganglion, it's the same thing. It's kind of like a light switch. Flip it off, and it's all gone. And it's the same thing with the cervical injury.
Okay. So it's your opinion that Ms. Clarkson was in the chair, and looking at this particular exhibit that's now on the screen, was this the exact position she was in when the trigger was pulled?
No.
Okay. Would there be any movement of the body, arms, legs, after the bullet was fired into her mouth?
Yes.
And explain how that occurs.
Okay. Common sense tells you that the body will move, but it's wrong.
Hey,
it does move. And so when she shot herself, she was sitting in the back of the chair, and then she slid downward a bit. Her arms would have fallen. The gun would have fallen, and her head would have gone off to one side. But actually, when you see videotapes of people who've actually killed themselves and, are dead, and you can see them, and they're literally dead as the bullet hits them, you'll see then that sometimes the head will move to the right and the left, the arm will fall down, then stand there for a while, and then it'll move down further. Because what you've got is you've still got some spinal reflexes. It's when you go to a doctor's office and he hits your knee and your knee pops up like that. Well, what you've got, that's a reflex, but it's not through the brain, it's through your spinal cord. And so you can still have some movement after you're dead. It doesn't seem to make sense, but it actually does happen. I mean, there's no question about that. It's been documented. And so you can actually move your part of the body after that. And the most famous case, which came out of Colorado, was where they did an autopsy on a person, and during the autopsy, the body sat up. That was after they had removed the heart and all the internal organs.
And that was called Return of the Living Dead.
And what was happening was, as they were trying to remove the brain, the stimulation in the brain was causing a body without internal organs to sit up. And it's, which is unbelievable. But it does, because if your nerves still connected to the muscle, you can move. It's not voluntary. It's involuntary kind of twitching. That's the best way to explain it.
You sent me 5 months. That's unbelievable.
Pathologists, do they ever look at, there have been documented cases where people have shot themselves in the head and And they've actually, for whatever reason, been on videotape that pathologists have seen. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And are you aware of any cases where somebody shoots themselves in the head, essentially is immediately brain dead, such as this case where there's movement?
Oh, yes, there's a case in California.
What case are you referring to?
The one out of San Bernardino, I think it is.
Was that a case in 2003?
Yes.
Where a person was in custody and being videotaped and about to be interrogated when he shot himself?
The police had not searched him for a gun. And you could see him take out an automatic pistol, take off the safety, shoot himself, and then he slides down into the chair in the exact same position as Miss Clarkson. One hand falls to the lap and stays there for a while. And then the hand slides down. His head goes to the right. No, head goes first to the left. Then it rotates to the right. And then 22 seconds after he shoots himself, the head goes back to the left.
Yeah, and the type of wound that this person suffered caused him immediate brain death, similar to what happened here?
Right, it's a large caliber semi-automatic pistol.
I think I'm watching the video right now. I'm not going to show it, but...
And
maybe not.
So
this one's
there's
from
these
2007.
involuntary
I don't think it'd be the
movements
same
that
year.
occur, and is there any way to predict in a particular case how they happened?
No.
So
it's no.
But I'm literally watching a video of a guy in an interrogation pull a gun out right now. Oh, they didn't show the actual ending. So I will kind of show that. So here's what I found, and I don't think it's the same one. And they cut it out, so don't worry. He pulls the gun out. But I don't think it's the same one. This says 2007, and this is... And I did a little Googling, and I found that there's one from 2003.
Chance how what's going to happen.
Okay, so
I think it's the one
if
that
somebody were to say that she was in this position when the gun was fired, in other words, with her legs outstretched, that wouldn't be an accurate way to perceive where she was when the gun was actually fired.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And Dr. DeMaio, I want to now kind of shift the focus from the muscle movement, the movement of the legs, the head, et cetera, and ask you, with reference to the breathing capability of somebody that suffered an injury such as Ms. Clarkson, can a person take agonal or last breaths after being shot the way she was shot?
Yes.
Okay.
But if you ask me how many, there's no way anyone can say, because no one ever sees this. I mean, you can say 1 or 2 or 5, and no one can say you're wrong, because no one's ever seen this. And there's no experiments or anything like that.
I think that is it, actually. Yeah, actually, if you look at I'm pretty sure the one he's talking about is the one I just showed. And the actual date on that, I know that it said 2007 on that thing, but the actual date on that is from December 19, 2003. So I think that's the one that he's talking about, where a guy just casually takes the gun out of his fucking pants, literally in the interrogation room, and ends it.
You could definitely exhale.
Oh shit!
Because exhale is completely passive. If you think about it,
I'm not going to show
when
it,
you
but
inhale,
I do want to see how he slumps.
you command your muscles to pull the chest apart, depress the diaphragm, and so.
Dude, it's exactly how he's describing it.
The chest cavity expands, air comes rushing into the lungs, and the lungs expand. But when you exhale, it's kind of like relaxing. And that you don't need anything.
I'm pretty sure that's not me.
So if somebody said that you might be able to inhale,
maybe it is.
It would be less likely than exhale.
Right. Exhale, no problem. That's all going
That was pretty brutal, but it happened exactly how he just described that.
Is what you argue over.
Okay. Basically, nobody really knows whether somebody could take 1 breath, 2 breaths.
That's the honest truth. No one knows.
Okay. Dr. DeMaio, with reference to the gun, I want to show you a demonstrative piece of...
So what just happened in this? This dude never stopped moving after the shot. Like, his body kept moving. Like,
video that shows a gunfire, and I want to ask you some questions about that. If we could have the GSR gun video and have it marked next to the order you're on.
That would be H, septuple H.
it actually, he was in a seating position when it happened, and he ended up basically in the exact same position as Lana Clarkson.
If you could look at this, is it
know,
your
man.
understanding that
Shit's
this is a
interesting.
photograph of the weapon, the gun in this particular case that was found at the scene?
Yes.
I was also very, very crazy. I wouldn't recommend anybody looking for it. But also, incredibly interesting. Amber Burns, thank you so much for being in here today. Be careful.
All right, I think we got them mixed up, so this is the wrong one. We're going to...
Well, we need to take a recess anyway, so maybe this is a good
All right,
time.
let's see where we're going next. We got a cross coming here. I do want to see.
Thank you.
So we get in here on this man. Get hot and heavy. Where are we going next? Part 3 continues his testimony. So no cross just yet. 49 minutes here. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. Let's spin a wheel. Let's get everybody hyped up. Let's spin a wheel here on Old Murder Church. Good luck, everyone. We're giving away the new holiday tea. And let me get the... Let me get this. Bada bing, bada boom. Ladies and gentlemen, good luck. Let's see if I can get a good spin. Ooh, that's a hot one. That's a hot one. Look at that thing. Woo, that's a good spin. Good luck. No whammies. Oh, that's a Sheila. That's a Sheila Duffy. Holy shit, Sheila. Well, Sheila, I may have to go ahead and get this one here, too, before I send your package. Damn. Congratulations, Sheila Duffy. Just now winning the holiday t-shirt. Congratulations. Woo! Nice.
Hold up! Hold up! Hold up!
Oh, yeah, Sheila.
Order, court's in session. All right, back on the record. All parties, jurors, alternates, and the witness are present is heretofore. You may proceed.
Thank you. We've got the correct video. The last one, Your Honor, had the picture of the wrong gun.
That's
so
a septuple H.
Yeah, septuple H. So this one is actually a picture of some tissue ejection. And I want to have you look at this, Dr. DeMaio, and I'll ask you some questions after I have it played through one time. First of all, this is the same picture of the trajectory of the bullet path that was done by Dr. Pena. Is that correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, on this note, we need to approach.
All right, you may approach.
That's okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, we're going to need to do something outside your presence. Keeping in mind the admonition, would you please step into the jury room? We'll call you whenever we're ready. I'm not sure how long it's going to be. All right, the jurors and the alternates have left. All right, Mr. Plord, make an offer of proof, if you will.
Yeah, I'd like to play the video. It's only about 5-10 seconds, and then lay the foundation with the witness. This would be HHH is to the 7.
Yes. Got you on there.
If you could watch this, Dr. DeMaio.
Yes, sir.
Dr. DeMaio, you're familiar with this video demonstrative piece of evidence animation, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Does this video, in a demonstrative sort of way, show the trajectory of the bullet and the type of effect that the bullet has as far as the discharges of gases, tissues, and blood from an interoral wound?
Yes, sir.
Is this video meant to recreate exactly what happened in this particular case?
No, it just shows you what happens with intraoral wounds.
Okay, now the particles that are coming out, are they essentially not visible to the naked eye, and is this meant to demonstrate what's occurring?
Right.
Okay.
They're not visible because the particles are so small. You might see
It might be a bit much,
cloud
Joseph.
or something, but you can't really see the things as they're coming out, because they're coming out pretty fast.
Okay, all right. That's essentially my offer of proof.
Okay.
And my objection is the same. There's absolutely no foundation for this whatsoever. This is a video animation. This is a cartoon. It's not founded in science. It's not founded on fact. The doctor just indicated it's not meant to recreate what happened in that foyer that night. That's going to be the impression that the defense is certainly going to leave with the jurors, this massive amount of what appears to be, I can't figure out for the life of me now that I've just heard Dr. DeMaio say that that's supposed to be invisible. If it's supposed to be invisible to the naked eye, then what are all the colored particles coming out of the oral cavity of the head supposed to represent?
It's supposed to, as it's just been explained, it's to help the jury or the trier of fact visualize what happens, because otherwise they couldn't see it. And since it's not an attempt to say that duplicates the event or the amount, it's just to visualize what has been testified to, I don't see the objection as well taken. It's not misleading because they're not attempting to say, this is the way it happened. It's just to show you how blood comes out in this type of a wound. It's just, that's what it's being presented as.
I understand the argument. My argument would be under 352, if it's not meant to reproduce what happened inside the foyer, which is the issue before the trier of fact, then this can and I think will be inherently misleading about the amount of tissue and blood and the explosive effect that Dr. DeMaio has talked about. That's not representative of what happened in this case, and that's indicated by the blood or lack of blood at the actual scene.
And I think that's all appropriate for cross-examination. It's just an attempt to put into visual terms what the doctor has testified to. I disagree that under 352 it should be kept out. It's just, it's an aid, if you will, and based upon what's been presented to me, there's no attempt to mislead, and certainly you can take care of that with cross-examination. The objection is overruled.
Your Honor, there may be a second. I'm not sure it was.
No, we're not going to get to that because we got the wrong picture of the...
Okay.
All right, let's bring the jurors back.
Thank you.
That's crazy. That's
All right, the jurors and alternates have returned, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll again ask that septuple H be put up, and we'll put that on the screen now. And my first question to you, Dr. DeMaio, this is a very short video clip, and this is the first thing that's shown is the diagram that was done by Dr. Pena. And I want you to watch this, and then I want to ask you some questions about it after it's done. And but before I get into the playing of it, is this particular video a demonstrative way to show what happens with an intraoral gunshot wound and not meant to necessarily recreate what actually happened in this case?
Yes, it's just a demonstration.
Okay, so when the members of the jury watch it, they're not going to say that this is exactly what happened in this case because it's impossible to recreate it. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay, but what comes out of the mouth is blood, saliva, brain tissue, things like that, gunshot particles and so forth?
And tissue, right.
And are they actually invisible to the naked eye?
For the most part, because they're really small, they're moving fast, and, you know, it's over in a second, like. And so it's just a blur.
Okay, with all that in mind, if you could take a look at this, I'll have some follow-up questions if we can have it played at this point. Okay, Dr. DeMaio, the first question I have as far as the gun itself that is still seen here, does this show the correct orientation as to where the gun was in Lana Clarkson's mouth as far as its approximate position when it was fired?
Yes, sir.
And then this reddish yellow line, that shows the trajectory similar to the other exhibit that we looked at this morning. Is that correct? Now, all the particles, we don't know what position Miss Clarkson's head was in when the gun was fired. Is that correct?
That's right. You can't tell because the head's being so mobile. You only know the relationship between the gun and the head, but not exactly where the head is.
Okay, so one caveat or position is just the head is demonstrated in the anatomically straight up and down position, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, similar to Dr. Pena's diagram, is that true?
Yes, sir.
Now, with reference to the all these little particles, they're different colors. Are they meant to represent what can't be seen with the naked eye of the tissue, the blood, and other stuff that gets ejected when a intraoral or inside the mouth gunshot wound occurs?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if we could have it replayed, I wanted to ask you to stop it at a particular position. Stop. Okay, now the bullet goes much faster than what this demonstrative exhibit shows. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The gun in this case isn't meant to, it doesn't show any recoil, and that wouldn't be exactly what happens. Is that true?
That's correct, but really the ejection occurs before the recoil really starts.
Okay, it occurs immediately, even before the gun would recoil out of the mouth. Is that correct?
Right, because the gas cloud is coming out at and with the at the same time as the bullet and such, and is beginning to expand immediately.
Okay, if we could play it and then stop it when I give you the mark. And basically, until all the gases are evacuated from the mouth, does the blood, tissue, saliva, etc., all the materials keep flowing out?
Yes, it comes out in a burst, a continuous burst, until the gas is all depleted, forcing everything out in front of it.
And you looked at this to, and can you tell us that this demonstrates what happens, but not necessarily exactly the way it happened in this case?
Right. This is a generic, you might say, intraoral gunshot wound.
Okay. And with reference to the time that it takes for this stuff to be expelled, this blowback, back spatter of blood, tissue, etc., what kind of time frames are we talking about that this occurs?
Hundredths of a second.
All right. And if we could continue on. Now, yesterday you indicated that something about the way this occurs is random. And what are the variables that cause it to be random? In other words, what makes it happen one way one time and another way another time?
Okay, you mean the way the material is ejected?
Correct.
Right. I mean, if you see it doesn't come out like a cone or a semicircular because the gas is, there's turbulence. So you may have more tissue ejected to the right the first time you shoot, or more tissue to the left the second time, or it may be even or more towards the center. And so it's pure chance. It just depends on the gas turbulence, the structure of the nostrils, how open the mouth is, as the gas flows across the teeth. So we know it's in an 180-degree arc, but the way it comes out more to the right or left or anything is chance. You don't know.
Okay, so would it be correct, could you, by looking at any patterns that are recovered either by photography or on clothing or carpeting or whether, could you make a determination based upon that pattern and say that the head was in a particular position based upon your experience?
No, all you could say is, like the head's facing forward. I mean, but you.
Hey, Cheney, I see you're asking Jessica if she's streaming today. It looks like she is. She just now made a post on the old X machine, and I'm going to retweet that now and share Jessica's information in the chat here. Make sure you're following Jessica for Justice on YouTube and Kick.
You couldn't say it's turned to the right or the left or anything like that.
Okay, and depending on the head's orientation, the amount of material or the material that comes out of the nose may be pointed in different directions.
Right. If the head's in the anatomical position this way or whether it's back this way, it's, the thing with the head is it's just so flexible. Front, back, right, left, and then all angles in between.
Okay. Now, if the person that's holding the weapon would be still holding the weapon in the mouth when this tissue, blood, etc., starts to be ejected, is that correct?
Oh, yes.
In this particular case, setting aside the generic demonstrative showing that you have here, does the physical evidence of where Ms. Clarkson's hands were with reference to the tissue support the notion that she was holding the weapon?
Yes.
And how does it do that, Dr. DeMaio?
Okay, I mentioned the blood, one thing, and I mentioned the gunshot residue. And then the other thing is it has to do with tissue that was recovered from her arms, from her clothing, from the jacket she was wearing. There was tissue on the right sleeve, shoulder, the shoulder on the left side, and the left sleeve. There was, when you made scrapings of this material and examined it under the microscope, you could see little particles of dried out tissue with nuclei, and it was the. I think I stopped it with.
It wasn't the word you used, but it started to sound like nuclear or nucleus.
Yeah, right. Okay. I was about to say nucleated. essentially what you're looking at is little clumps of the lining of the mouth and nose. And they're all dried out and shriveled up. But you could see that there are clumps of tissue on the shoulders and on the left sleeve. They're not associated with any blood. There's also some clumps of this tissue on the buttons of the left sleeve.
Dr. Ryan, I want to ask you some questions about that. You looked at this article of clothing that Ms. Clarkson was wearing at the crime laboratory, is that correct?
Yes.
And at your direction were some tissue slides prepared?
Yes.
Tell the jury what your thinking was to get these tissue slides prepared and what they were and what they told you.
Well, essentially what I wanted to see was if the tissue was distributed up and down the arms. And which would be, you know, if you're holding it in front of you that way. And that's what I asked people to collect, to make slides and to send it to me. And, you know, not to pick bloody regions. So like when I give the descriptions, I state that there's not clotted blood in these. It's not associated with blood.
Okay.
This is just tissue that has come out independently by itself.
Okay. Now, Dr. DeMille, there's been some testimony and discussion, and there's some records that after Ms. Clarkson's body was moved, that there was a purge of blood that came out and contaminated some of her clothing. Is that what you were looking at?
No. I mean, if you look at my report, there were 5 scrapings taken. 1 showed nothing. And in 3 of them, there was no red blood cells at all, no red blood cells, and therefore it was not part of a blood clot. In the other one, you know, it was kind of questionable. But even then, so most of this tissue, I can say, did not come from the purge fluid, okay? Now, even if you had the purge fluid, you would not expect tissue to be in the purge fluid. The reason is simple.
That's a punk name for
what
it.
happened
Punk band name.
is
welcome purge fluid.
The body was left to lie there for about 12 hours, even more, 14, 15 hours. It was not moved. And what happens is if you can see it in the doctor's office, you put blood in the tube, and the white blood cells, fibrin, which is protein, will settle. So if she had this tissue in her blood, it would settle and be entangled in this fibrin and have adjacent white blood cells. And this was not in the case with any of these specimens. Because what happened is when you pour the tube of blood, out runs the liquid blood, and you usually get a clump at the bottom because it's retarded, because it's full of the little clump.
Okay, so this blood purges we're talking about is actually the blood that's separated inside her body that flows out when the body is moved?
Right. Okay. The fibrins and red white blood cells settle down. And the tissue would be settled down, too. So when you start purging, you're getting just true red blood cells and plasma.
Okay. And
serum.
When you looked at the areas of the jacket that were of interest to you, you were looking for tissue, and were you looking for the type of tissue that came out when the explosion of gases occurred and then the emission of that tissue?
Right. When you look at it grossly, it looks like dandruff, white little particles, or sometimes you'll have like a slimy appearance. And that's because there's some mucus and there may be brain tissue incorporated in this. The tissue itself, as I said, had dried out. There was no question that it was tissue. There's no question that there were nuclei. Many of the pieces were obviously the lining of the mouth. There was some small pieces, I can't say where they came from. They may have represented some brain tissue or so, or muscle, not muscle. But I couldn't say 100% where they were from.
So when all this stuff comes out of the mouth, it's all mixed together, basically. It could be some brain tissue, it could be some...
There's bone, there's fat, there's pieces of blood vessels, there would be the lining of the mouth and the nose. It's all being stripped and blown out.
Okay, so when you look at these slides are essentially made up and then they're processed in a way where you can look at them. And if you could explain to the jury what that process is.
Well, essentially what you do is you take the material and it goes through a number of what's called extractions, put through alcohols and other chemicals. This is like if you have a piece of your tissue taken out of your body the same way. And essentially, this is what happened, was this tissue was processed just like the tissue from surgery, or if you've had a biopsy or something, and it was stained with something called hematoxylin and eosin, and so you could see the cellular structure, the nuclei, the bodies of the cells.
Okay, so you had yesterday, when you were talking about your experience in hospital pathology and anatomical, looking at cells under a microscope, essentially.
Right.
Brooklyn.
You have to spend in training 2 years doing this, and I spent 2 years doing this, and I still, even in forensic autopsies, you do microscopic sections and look at tissue. Not as much as, a surgical pathologist, a lot less, but you still do it.
Like somebody in the hospital that works as a pathologist would be doing this on a daily basis. You do it in connection with your forensic work.
Right.
Okay. And in this particular case, the issue that was being considered would be the distribution of tissue as opposed to blood spatter. That would be a different analysis.
Yes.
Okay. And so why did you feel that Lana Clarkson's jacket was of interest to you in answering the question that you sought to be answered?
Oh, because when I looked at it, I saw material that did not appear to be blood, this slimy type appearance on the shoulder. And so I said, that's not blood. It has a different appearance. And so that's what said, let me start looking for some tissue.
Okay, so we've got the left shoulder that you looked at that, is that correct?
It's both shoulders.
Left and right.
And the left sleeve.
Left sleeve.
And then there's also the buttons of the left sleeve.
Okay. What does that tell you, looking at this tissue that's on her jacket that she was wearing? This is the black jacket?
Yes. What it is, it's consistent with the arms being raised in this position. And this is what will happen, when people shoot themselves this way. You look especially at the shoulders and then the sleeves, that the material, it's deposited.
Okay, and again, it's somewhat random. In other words, it doesn't happen the same way every time.
Right. What this is again, this is supportive. And I keep going on, is each one of these is a little piece in a puzzle. And if you take look at just one individually, you can say, what does it mean? But when you put it all together, you get the picture.
Okay. But did it support the notion that the hands are positioned a particular way, as you just demonstrated?
Right, raised, yes.
Raised in front of the face in a position where it was consistent with holding a weapon pointed inside the mouth?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, Dr. DeMaio, in this particular case, I'm going to ask that an exhibit, former defendant's exhibit GGGG, 4 Gs be put up. Ask if you recognize this particular photograph. You see this exhibit 4 Gs?
Yes.
Okay, and was this one of the scene photographs, one of the many scene photographs that you reviewed?
Yes.
And did you also review, as part of the Sheriff's Department records, the records regarding the testing of the carpeted areas and the stairs and so forth with a chemical known as luminol?
Yes, I did.
And are you familiar with luminol and its use in evaluating death scenes?
Yes, you're looking for blood.
Okay, and if the report was negative, as it was in this case, that there was no blood outside of the immediate area of Ms. Clarkson, in other words, except for the pooled blood deposits. Does that contradict anything that you've said as far as this emission of tissue and blood?
No, because if you just look at that one photo, taken sometime probably after 6 o'clock, you're seeing a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people walking all around on that floor in their plain shoes. And the test for the luminol wasn't done until the next day. And this is just one time. I mean, the log apparently shows that 100 entries, I believe, more than 100 entries. So you got people walking back and forth on a scene with their shoes dropping things and picking things up all across the scene. So if you were going to do your luminol test, you should have done it before you had this little crowded meeting there.
Okay. Is luminol best used to look for where, like, a body or something is moved and there's a large smear?
Yeah. My understanding from the testimony was that the luminol was just sprayed on the floor, and remember, you're looking for particles less than a millimeter or a millimeter, and a millimeter is kind of like a thick pencil line. And so, you're looking down, the only way to do it is to get down on your hands and knees with a magnifying glass and look. And there was no indication that this was done. And then, of course, if it's after all these people built through the scene.
Okay. Dr. DeMaio, with reference to this particular case, I want to move to questions in the area of not cause of death, but manner of death. And you mentioned in your recitation of materials that you looked at certain emails, and what was it about the emails that you reviewed that suggested to you that Ms. Clarkson was the victim of a self-inflicted wound?
Well, the thing was that she was afraid of she had financial problems. She was afraid of being evicted. In one of the emails, she agrees that she has no job skills. She trashes mentions that she trashed her house because she was depressed. In her day book, it mentions that she's got problems with alcohol and drugs. She had looked up about making an appointment with the Screen Actors Guild for apparently some counseling, an advertisement for counseling for drugs, for alcohol and depression. She had health problems, severe headaches, which didn't respond to therapy. In one note to a doctor, she said, having to do with the head, she was at the end of a rope and couldn't function. So, she had some self-destructive characteristics, the drugs and alcohol. She had health problems, severe headaches, which were not responding and which no one could figure out where they came from. She also, of course, had the wrist injuries and had been on very heavy doses of narcotics for almost 6 months, though she had stopped 6 months before. She had financial problems, no skills. She was an actress, was 40 years of age. Sorry, that's sex discrimination, but that's the way it is. Eviction, money problems, depression.
How does depression relate to somebody being at risk for suicide?
Most, virtually all people who commit suicide are depressed. I mean, except if you get arrested or do something. But the majority, the average suicide there's depression. Depression with life in general, or love, or money, but it's depression. That's the most common factor associated with self-inflicted wounds.
Now, in Dr. Pena's laboratory or coroner records, he talks about her background and so forth, and I believe one of the things he testified about was that Ms. Clarkson had a familiarity with guns. She had been to the Beverly Hill Gun Club, etc. Is that your understanding, Doctor?
Yes, that she was familiar with weapons.
Okay. And is that supported by the coroner's file?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What difference does that make as far as whether or not she took her own life as a self-inflicted wound here?
Well, you know what you're doing. I mean, you know how the weapon functions. It's not like that you're saying, oh, how's this work? But of course, putting it in your mouth kind of suggests it's self-inflicted,
okay.
Obviously.
All right, Dr. DeMaio, with reference to Ms. Clarkson, you mentioned a computer record that referenced a alcohol depression clinic that was on her computer in some way?
Yes.
Was there any indication that she actually went and took herself to that clinic?
No, the only email I saw was she had just accessed it.
Okay. Now,
that was June of the prior year, 02.
Dr. DeMaio, with reference to Ms. Clarkson, let me ask you this hypothetical question. Assuming, for the purpose of this question, a witness would testify that she knew Ms. Clarkson and was acquainted with her for a number of years and was a friend of hers, would statements that Ms. Clarkson made to this witness, assuming that they're true and correct, would they be give us some insight or understanding as to what she was thinking if they were made, let's say, in the 2 weeks or so prior to her death?
I'm going to object, Your Honor. This has been discussed outside the
approach the bench.
Approaching the bench.
Okay, Dr. DeMaio, I'm going to move on to another area. And,
we're going to have in this corner.
The as far as the manner of death, in this case, self-inflicted wound that you've talked to the jury about, did you look at the medical history, in particular the history of Ms. Clarkson and her use of prescriptions, things of that nature?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and from those medical records, did you get most of those from the coroner's file and then got additional ones that were provided to you from doctors?
Yes.
And were they the same ones, to your knowledge, that Dr. Pena looked at as far as their prescription histories and so forth?
Speculation.
Unless it's clear from the testimony, if you want to point to something in particular.
You looked at the Long's Drug Store prescription records, is that correct?
Yes.
I believe they're marked as exhibit. I don't remember the number, but then you also considered her use of alcohol, including at the time of her death. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and let's talk about the what was in her body at the time of death. First, Dr. DeMaio, in connection with the medical examiner's evaluation, they did a toxicology of her blood and tissue. Is that correct?
Yes, they did.
Okay, and did they take blood at two different locations, and one blood alcohol test was a 0.12 and another one was a 0.14?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and did they also test her blood for other drugs that might have been in her system?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and based upon the prescription records that you had, was she still being prescribed any medications?
Yeah, this dude is a pathologist.
No, her medications had expired around August of the prior year.
Okay, so this was 2003, February 3rd, and according to what medical records you had, there were no prescriptions from the doctors that you were seeing, correct?
Yes.
Now, with reference to, and what was the prescribed drug back in August that was discontinued?
It was the hydrocodone.
Okay.
Vicodin.
Vicodin, okay. And quickly tell the jury what that is as far as what it's used for.
Essentially, it's a synthetic narcotic. It's used for pain.
Okay. And with reference to the coroner's investigation, was there some of that found in her purse, to your understanding?
Yeah, she had a level of .07, which is a high therapeutic level.
Okay. And with reference to alcohol, you mentioned that she was a low of .12, high of .14, depending upon which test.
I would use the .12. The .14 is subject to challenge. The .12 isn't.
Okay. And what is the combined effect of the Vicodin or the hydrocodone and the alcohol at the level that was detected in her body?
They're synergistic. They're both central nervous system depressants. And when they add together, you get more effect than
literally everything I'm seeing right now is food. What's happening?
And by synergism, I mean it's not 1 + 1 is 2, but 1 + 1 = 5. Okay.
And that particular, those levels of both the narcotic drug and the alcohol, how does that affect a person's judgment?
Okay, even if you just consider alcohol itself, anytime you reach about .1, you start to have impairment in judgment, you have increased risk-taking, and people do things that they wouldn't do if they were sober. So a .1 is the threshold. She's up to .12. She's got Vicodin on board too, so she's got impaired judgment and reasoning processes.
Okay, and in the research, you look at that as a factor regarding the risk for taking their own life. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. About a third, maybe.
I don't even know what I got there.
Let's see, I've got the data here.
I haven't went shopping, though. I'm doing that today. That's what I went on Saturday. I'm like, oh, I like to go on Saturday. It makes it up between Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. In the study that I did, we found that about 32% of them had alcohol levels of .05 and greater. And most, it was higher than the .05 area.
Okay, and so would it be correct that all people that drink it, even at high levels, don't necessarily take their own life?
Oh, no. But because it impairs judgment, they do think, they're more impulsive. They'll do things that if they're cold sober, they'd give a second thought to and wouldn't do.
And is the same thing true of a person that's suffering from some form or level of depression? All people that are depressed don't take their own life, but people that take their own life tend to be depressed. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's kind of like, most people who are depressed get over it. Some people are always depressed and live their life depressed. And some people get depressed and kill them and take their lives. And the thing with alcohol, alcohol does not make you want to take your life, but it impairs your judgment. So if there are other factors like depression or something else, you have a tendency to do things you wouldn't do when you're sober. It just kind of impairs your thinking of these drugs and makes you do things that you wouldn't do if you weren't on them.
So it's a piece to the puzzle that you look at in a case, is that true?
Yes.
Now, did you look at her history of drug use that you gleaned from the medical records?
She had some, and it's more on the Vicodin especially, she'd been on the high levels from the surgery, really high levels that kept going on. The doctors, and then they just stopped giving it to her.
Okay. Dr. DeMaio, I wanted to ask you to look at a portion of her day planner, and this would be, the first one would be as of date of August 21st. And we'd ask that this be marked next in order. Oh, sorry, Mark, okay. Is this one of the documents or records that you looked at? Notation,
yes.
First sober day?
Yes.
Okay, did that have something to do with, did that correlate to the medical records and her cessation of the Vicodin?
Right. They had cut the Vicodin in August.
Okay. Now, looking at another exhibit, actually, it's got the second page. Let's take the second page, which has the date of September 21st, same calendar, day planner. And from, you were aware from the investigation of this case that law enforcement went to her cottage in Venice, the one that she was renting, and found a day planner for the previous year. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you were also aware that they didn't find a day planner for 2003?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the typical type thing where notations are made in it. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And this one here talked about 1 month at the top as far as, and did that have any significance to you as to, you know, her 1 month anniversary date of being sober?
Right. You know, and it was a little more than a month since she got her last prescription for hydrocodone. Okay. She got it August the 8th was her last prescription for Vicodin.
Now, we could have that taken down, please. And Dr. DeMaio, I want to finish up with a couple of different subjects here, just to ask you in general, with reference to your medical training, do you know anything about blood and how it clots?
Yes.
Okay, and I take it that most medical doctors know something about that. Is that correct?
Right. It's a way you work up the patient. You want to know what their clotting time is.
Okay, and you learn a lot about blood and how it and what its function is in medical school, I take it. Is that
yes.
true? Okay, and if you take a tube of blood out of the body or a withdrawal of blood, is there some general way that you know that it clots in a certain amount of time?
Yes, you know, people do it all the time. You can see it slowly begin to clot.
Okay, what is the general parameters for blood that's outside the body? Blood that's
a couple of minutes.
Okay. Does it vary between individuals?
Yes.
And now I want to kind of translate that into blood that comes out of the body that is not done in a medical way. Are there variations in the time that it takes to clot depending upon how it comes out of the body?
Yes, it depends on whether it comes out on the surface it lands on. It depends upon whether it's mixed with other tissue, which would have an effect. Thus, you know, if you have brain tissue and spinal fluid, the compounds that you have in it tend to accelerate the clotting so that it clots fast. And it depends on what the material is that it's on top of.
Okay.
That it lands.
Well, let's take this sort of in part. So if somebody has a wound, particularly of the type that Ms. Clarkson had, where it was an inside-the-mouth wound, in the manner and method by which it was occurred here at the autopsy, what would come out? How would the blood come out once it would gush out?
It would come out with, you know, the blood, mucus, some spinal fluid. This is initially, remember, tissue, perhaps some brain tissue.
Okay.
And this would tend to accelerate the clotting because of the material, especially, you know, even tissue. Tissue has factors that cause blood to clot.
Okay. So if somebody were to say that if the blood that came out of Ms. Clarkson and basically poured out of her after this explosion and after the ejection of blood and tissue, there's basically blood flow that occurs. Is that correct?
Right.
And you can see it in the photographs of the scene. It's running down her, and that's the secondary blood that comes out after the explosion. Is that
right.
correct? And that blood could clot much quicker than if it was just taken out of a vein in a hospital type.
Right,
setting.
because what you're doing is you're doing it aseptically, putting it on a nice clean surface, and there's no injury to tissue there. You don't have the release of factors that would precipitate clotting. But, you know, when you injure tissue, factors are released that cause cellular reaction and clotting.
Okay. So if somebody were to say that with reference to the blood that came out of Ms. Clarkson and was on her, that it would take 2 to 3 minutes for it to clot, would that be correct based upon the type of injuries that she had?
No. It can clot virtually immediately.
Okay. It's called a coagulant or something to that effect?
Yeah, coagulates, that's what they mean.
Okay.
Coagulation is a big word for clotting.
Okay. Dr. DeMaio, I want to now ask you about, from a medical standpoint, if we see a bruise on somebody's body, is there any medical way to tell whether that bruise was a minute old, an hour old, 2 hours, a day, 2 days old?
No.
Okay.
There's two ways to date bruises, both of which don't work. One is to do microscopic sections, but there was work done, the best work was done actually in the 1950s, and they found that you could get a bruise and you can get a reaction within an hour, or you could get a bruise and no reaction for a day.
Oh shit, fajitas, I'm sorry. Oh, it's been extra fajita-y today.
Or 2 days. It's completely random. You can have a bruise an hour old, 6 hours old, a day old, or 2 days old that looks exactly the same under the microscope. It just has to do with the tissue and tissue reaction. If you don't get enough injury, you just don't get a tissue reaction, and you just cannot date it microscopically. The other way you can try is by colors. And, you know, all of us have bruised, and, you know, we look at it, and the bruise turns from blue, and then you get a green or a yellow, and sometimes it has a tan color. And it's supposed to go through this sequence, but the bruises don't. And then sometimes you can get a bruise today, and tomorrow it's yellow. And it's not supposed to turn yellow for 3 or 4 days. And then you'll get a deep bruise that remains blue for a couple of days. So in the end, you kind of say, well, it looks like it's recent. And if it's a different color, you say, then it's kind of old. And what do you mean? A day or 2 or 3 or 4, something like that. And at the present time, there's no way to date by either the standard microscopic sections, or by color, except to say, looks recent or looks old. And old means usually a couple of days.
Okay. So has there been medical research done on this subject?
Yes. As I said, the microscopic, the best article, which no one's ever repeated because it's so good, was done in the 1950s. The color, there's been a couple of articles actually within the last few years, because this has to do with child abuse. They're trying to date child abuse by bruises. And they come to the same conclusion. It's just so inaccurate. So they'll say it's either fresh or it's old. And that's about all you can say. Or recent and old, not fresh.
Some family a couple hours away to help them decorate for Christmas.
Yeah, it's not accurate at all. It's kind of like determining time of death. Not accurate.
I've got 2 quick exhibits I want to go through. First is the Defense Exhibit 4H. I can have this one.
Thanks, Sammy. You're a big part of making it awesome.
In this particular exhibit, it shows the location of a tooth particle, item number 11, and my you knew where Miss Clarkson's body was. You could see at the bottom of the photograph, you see somebody looking at a weapon, and is it your understanding that her body is basically right out of the frame there in the reference?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any way you can tell, based upon how the tooth material, some artificial, some not, was ejected from around, is there any way you can tell what direction in general she was? In other words, how did they end up in the positions they were in, the tooth material? And in other words...
all you can say, it went forward.
Okay.
At some angle. That's about the best you can say.
Okay, when a gun is fired and when it recoils, does it do it in a predictable direction?
Okay, when a gun, oh, you're talking about the gun itself, in the hands and things?
Yeah, I am. I'm talking about the gun itself, and there was some natural tooth material, I believe it was your testimony, that hit the gun and that got ejected also.
Right.
Okay. And my question is, how does the gun always go in a predictable direction once it's fired?
Okay. Well, the gun will recoil upward and backwards.
Okay.
Now, whether it'll stay in the hand, with handguns, about a quarter of the time, 25.7%. This is another study by Garavaglia. It's 25.7% will stay in the hands. The rest of the time, it'll fall from the hands. And it'll fall either to the right or to the left or forward. And, you know, it's kind of, if you have the gun to the right side, it'll tend to fall to the right. If you have the gun to the left side, it'll tend to fall to the left, unless it falls straight forward. If you have it in the front, it can fall forward or the right to the left. And there's just not a rhyme or reason. It usually stays very close to the body, within a foot of the body when it does fall. But as the ones held to the right side of the head tend to fall to the right or the center, the ones to the left of the center, and the ones in the center, anyway. You just can't say.
All right, at this point, we're going to take our noon recess, ladies and gentlemen. Keep in mind the admonition, 1:30 this afternoon. Thank you.
Let's see where we're headed next. Part 4 of Vincent De Maio. I just want to see how long it is. 1 hour and 8 minutes. I think I am going to call Murder Church just a little bit early today, really because I'm starving to death. I'm going to have to get some food, and I don't think I have anything here to eat. Yeah, I'm very hungry, actually. I'm not going to make it. But we've had a great morning. Everyone coming through here, thank you all so much. Incredible service again. As we're going to continue down this testimony, we're still waiting for cross here from hopefully Alan Jackson, honestly. We'll get in there and cross De Maio. I still find it incredibly interesting, but yeah, there's a lot that he's, again, my new favorite word, opining about, that he honestly should have been objected to. I honestly feel like he was going into, you know, a little bit more than just the gun stuff, right? And then past the residue and the SUT and the actual action and how the gun would react and stuff like that. Still interesting though. I'm still very intrigued by this guy's testimony. But yeah, we're gonna keep going down this road for quite some time actually. But yeah, we're doing a lot of different trials here on Murder Church. Tuesday, I think I'm going to probably be doing another Courtney Clinny episode, probably continue that introduction. There's so much to get into on that one. And again, there was a motion hearing on Friday, so I need to actually get in there, get updated on what happened in that. That may come into play on Tuesday as well. Keep an eye on all days because you never know when I may go live. The normal days, of course, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. But you never know when something may happen. Of course, this coming Saturday, if everything goes according to plan, there will be a very special Sarah Boone stream that I have a very special guest who has some insider information about the location in Lowell where she is headed because she worked there. So yeah, going to have some cool stuff. Also, right there, I'm glad Jessica for Justice said that. Jessica will be streaming live on Kick today. A little bit of love after lockup. So make sure that you're following her, and then also make sure you're following her on YouTube as well, folks. She is amazing and awesome, and yeah, one of the good ones. Let me just say that. I'm going to get her Kick link in here one more time, and I get ready to send you guys out, if I could get you to do me a huge favor. Yesterday, I made a new video. It's an interesting one. It's a judge giving 320 years to some very young individuals, but the crime is pretty rough as well. This judge does not hold back. He gives his opinions, and it's about a 7-minute video, but it's pretty interesting. This is new as well. That is a brand new case. It wasn't something that was viral. This came through my feed yesterday on X, and I was like, holy shit. But 320 years dished out. If you guys could go and give that video a watch, give it a like, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think, and see if you think the judge was fair with his sentencing here. Thank you all so much. Appreciate the hell out of it. Absolutely amazing morning. Again, keep eyes on everything. I'm going to try to put together some more good shows. We're doing the damn thing. Publicly Buzzed, the Buzz Nation, growing every day. Couldn't do it without you. That's for damn sure. Have a great rest of your day, and let's kick this week's ass. Go check that video out. Let's go.
This verse